Donald Trump, of course, talked about Gaza, occupying Gaza. And we also have a situation brewing in Kenya whereby Somalis have been allowed to get IDs without vetting. So we're going to be talking about all these stories plus so many other things that have been happening. Namelia Envy, the People's Kamkunji Inangoananga, Mimi ni Ali Badawi from a remote secret location. Mimi ni Ali Badawi, aka Mjukuu Masai, and this is the One Mic Show. Karibuni. Okay, I think what we're going to do tonight, because of the time, we are just going to get started right away. And I'm going to go straight into the studio. First thing I'm going to say is that I'm in a secret location, not in the studio. And I will let you know where I am and what I'm doing. But I think like this week, I want us to contemplate on a number of issues that have been happening here in the U.S. and that people have been commenting in Kenya. And number one was USAID and the dismantling of the organization altogether. And the fact that it has affected so many Kenyans, well beyond what we had thought about. I think USAID had about, it had been reported that they have about 10,000 staffers in Kenya, both American and local staff. And then the projects they were running, they were employing close to 50,000 health workers. This includes doctors, nurses, clinical officers, and other people in the medical industry. All have been affected. Then, of course, there's these industries that are contracting with USAID, and a lot of them have also been affected. The numbers there's no clear numbers, but there's a very big number, larger than the people who are employed directly by USAID and the projects that USAID is handling. So we're going to be talking about this and the crazy other things that have been happening in the country. I think there was talk about releasing JFK and Martin Luther King classified documents on who assassinated them. And this is a tactic, I believe, but we're going to be talking about this later on. Then a lot of regret by some people who voted for Donald Trump. This is only 3 weeks into his administration, and so many things have been happening. But before we get started, I want to come straight back into the studio and go to DJ Moshfire. Maybe tell us briefly how your week was and what are the major things, because there were like 101 things happening. What are the things that captured your attention this week? DJ Moshfire, karibu sana.
Asante sana Ali, unaweza nisikia, unanipokea ama unaniona?
Loud and clear.
Excellent. Once again, like Ali said, we apologize to our listeners. So we're on YouTube right now for now. But yes, this week has had a lot of ups and downs, striking things. Kifo cha Leonard Mambo Mbotela. That one hit home. I actually got to meet the guy myself a long time ago. I don't know if aliku nakumbuka siku za OAU. If you remember OAU, pre-AU.
So Organization of African Unity.
Bas. I got to meet him. Wow, that was in the 80s when I got to meet the guy. Very, very, very nice man, loud, booming voice. A gentle giant. He wasn't a big guy, but his booming voice made him giant-like. And of course, by then, unajua, we were already, just his sportscaster stuff. He was on TV. He was just, he was a celebrity. For us, he was, the SI unit of journalism, So him. Then the USAID, like you touched on. Then defunding or pulling out from UNESCO, I think it's like about 3 or 4 different arms that the US has pulled out of the UN. 3 different organizations, and then even saying that they are not paying dues, and the repercussions of things from that. Then the one that hit hard for me also was the federal workers' return to office. And that has affected people who didn't even think it was going to affect them, literally to the point where you have to line up with a supervisor who is within a certain radius, and that radius is like 50 miles. So imagine kama ofisi yako ni 49 miles, the closest office from where your home is, you're going to drive 49 miles one way. So but again, the return to work thing, and then the what would I call it? I guess they call it a retirement option, and they're calling it is it I guess in a way you might say it's a voluntary retirement. So you can basically agree voluntary resignation. You can agree to take the voluntary resignation, and then if you then now qualify for retirement, you could then piggyback on that. What that means is that you were to stay home from, you had to make a decision by today. I think it was by February 6th, but that seems like it was thrown out. And so anyway, long story short is that as of the end of February, those government workers who took the voluntary resignation then were qualified to stay home and get paid until September. And then at that point, you walk away and keep it moving because you resigned. Now, if you've attained age of retirement, then you can opt to take your retirement. So it depends on what if you've ever been in the service. I mean, with the not military, but with the federal government for 25 years, or if you have done 20 years and attained the age of 50. So there's all sorts of different things are going, and all of these things are coming in and being driven by Dodge. So there's a whole lot of upheaval within the federal worker community, whether it's people who are even now looking at possibly moving, or even having to commute, go to another city, get an apartment there, stay there Monday through Friday, and then get a roommate who's also maybe from your town or from a different town who works in the same department as you, and then ikifika Friday unarudi home. Like, those are the different options that people have, because what happened is that 2020, when COVID came in, a lot of people realized that they're working from home, and people got homes. So that one is another thing, and that's a huge one, by the way, for the DMV area, because again, we have a ton of government departments here, seat of government is here, so a lot of people are affected by that. What else? Man, there's just a lot of things that have been happening. A ton of things have been happening. And every time you turn around, is he 46 or 47 now? 47 seems to, he's just, yani, every single time you turn around, he's the gift that keeps giving. There's always something that's coming out. I don't see an end to it right now, but something I see that's going to keep continuously coming down the pike is lawsuits. Zitaendelea zikikuja. And there's going to be judges blocking and doing all sorts of different things. Those who, are interfering and or so-called, there's going to be a lot before the dust settles. Back to you, Ali.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much, DJ Omosh Fire. And, like, the things have been coming at such an explosive pace that you keep wondering, does this guy even sleep? Is he intent on doing all these things at such a fast pace? And at the pace at which they're moving, we just have to be curious where we are going to be by, we're only in the month of February, by let's say the month of May, like what will have happened, what will be done. But I think because of this overspeeding, this is clearly overspeeding, and speed kills. I think at some point it might break the Republican Party. Because remember, the people who are being laid off are both Republicans and Democrats. All these people who are being affected by remote work policies, they're both Republican and Democrats. And one thing I've learned about American politics is that people are very fickle. The same people that voted for Obama are the same people that voted for Trump in the first term. So, and quite a number of people who voted for Joe Biden in the first term voted for Trump in the second term. Another thing that we're also going to be talking about, I want the listeners to pay attention to this, is there was a conversation last night with DJ Top Don on why the tour of Bien, like formerly Sauti Sol, or Bien of Sauti Sol, was supposed to be on tour in the US this month, but it got cancelled the last minute. So there was very interesting conversation because there was a Nigerian promoter who had taken over the tour, and there was a lot of questions that were being asked on why it's not a Kenyan who was handling the tour, and yeah, it was a very interesting conversation. So we're going to be talking about that later on the show. But now I want to go to Mika Och, who's also a remote worker like myself, but here amekataa kuingia Zoom. I don't know whether we throw government policies on him, but Mika Och, tell us about your week and what was the one most explosive thing that you had this week from the Trump administration? Mika, twende kazi.
Sasa Umoja alisema kila kitu, nikae pekee ndo na report. Hakuna kitu kingine ya kusema.
But useme uko in a YT country na Dodge imekuwa affect. That's all you have to say.
Sorry. Dodge doesn't affect you based on where you are. Dodge affects you based on where you're working or who you're working.
Unaona sasa
wewe sipewe Dodge imekuwa affect. Mambo rudi kwa office.
No, mimi sijambiwa kurudi.
Unaona, anyway, yes. Amesema niongee juu ya vitu za Trump, nisiongee juu ya kazi yangu.
Sorry.
All in all. Thank you, Ali, and I want to say Happy New Year to everybody. This is the first time I'm coming back to the show this year. Nimekuwa nikifight na jet lag. Actually, bado na fight na jet lag. I think kuzoeka ni mbaya. Recovery kitambo ilikuwa one business day. Siku hizi ni 3 weeks. But all in all, when you say the explosive things that we're looking at, for me, I'm not looking at it based on what the headlines are saying or what is happening, but I'm looking at it in terms of a president sat down with another leader of another country and decided that they're going to obliterate a whole country to build condos and houses and make it into a real estate development, which for me didn't make sense at all, because how do you just sit down and say that we're going to move people from Gaza, push them to other countries, force those other countries to take them? If they don't take them, you're going to put sanctions on them until they take them, and then redevelop that place for who and for why? Are you going to bring back the Palestinians who you're developing this place from? And another thing that I'm looking at is what most people don't really understand is when Trump did pull out the funding for USAID, he pulled out something that's called PEPFAR, which is actually the biggest donation by a president. It's a president-mandated aid donation that is what funds most of those organizations in USAID. And PEPFAR actually was put in place specifically for HIV/AIDS. PEPFAR is the main reason why AIDS infection in sub-Saharan Africa was lower than actually in places here in the USA. In cities like DC, Baltimore, Atlanta, San Francisco, the rate of HIV infection is actually higher than in parts of Africa because of PEPFAR. So when you pull that out, and let's be honest, majority of people in this world have slept with somebody who's HIV positive and they didn't know, because of the viral load, how the viral load is low. And the viral load is low because of the antiretroviral medicine that these people are having. Kenya and Africa is one of those places where you can get instant HIV tests, and which allows a lot of people to use them and engage in safe sex, free condoms, free education, free counseling that was happening. Now, all these things are going to be there, but you have to pay for them. They're not going to be free of subsidies because of that money that will come out. For me, what I look at it, I feel like this is ethnic cleansing, because if the rate of infection of HIV goes high again, those areas are going to see massive deaths. And those are and Africa and Latin America and parts of Asia are some of the places with the highest population growth, the highest birth rates. Now we've increased the mortality rate in those areas because we've taken away a program that was keeping diseases from there. Clearly shows it looks like a form of ethnic cleansing. So for me, it's more of not looking at what headlines are coming out and what is blocked, what is not blocked, but looking down the line, how does it affect those areas that this funding has been pulled out? So I work in healthcare. I look at a lot of healthcare data, and looking at these policies that are being put in place right now, it's going to be bad. And I'm going to tell, not to fearmonger or to do anything, but if you're American in this country and you're in this country, you have to start taking care of yourself, because the healthcare standards are going to deteriorate. Most of this funding is what goes to pharmaceutical companies. Most of these hospitals you see over here are non-profit. In fact, I don't think there's a for-profit hospital in America. All these non-profit hospitals are going to be affected by some of these policies that are coming. Insurance companies are going to reduce coverage of some things. So,
Wow.
if you're not healthy, you're not taking care of yourself in a healthy way, shauri yako.
Yani Mikasi umesema insurance itaniramba.
At some point, already they had started that. That's why you've seen United is in trouble because of denying so many claims. But the way it's going right now, they don't have any checks and balances. They don't want to use meaningful use, which controls on what you build when you go to hospital. So if you don't have somebody who's going to check on people, you don't have guidelines that are going to mandate how people are going to be treated and how insurance are going to be paying for these treatments, healthcare is going to become more expensive than it is right now. We can hardly afford it with the insurance that we have right now. Now imagine when the insurance tells you, I will only cover for Tylenol, the rest is you.
Wow. I mean, this is
that's quite a bit.
This is so profound. This is so profound, and I think I love these sober conversations because there is a lot of I don't know how to express this, but there's a lot of politicization of this conversation. And what's very scary is what Mika has said, because I always worry about Kenya, is what he said about HIV infections in Kenya. There's a lot of people who are having these one-dimensional conversations, feel-good conversations of wacha aid itoke, hiyo pesa yote imeibiwa, imekuliwa na members of parliament na nini. But then, and we're not saying there's no corruption, but then we're also looking at the overall impact of what has been happening. We know that these programs that came from the US, like PEPFAR, for example, we know it's one of the single programs that is responsible for the reduction of HIV. I think anyone who's in anywhere from their mid-30s going up is very aware of how almost all families in Kenya, I literally don't know one family that did not lose someone to HIV. So now there are these people who are shouting at the Ministry of Health should be taking care of that, or we should prepare. And yeah, maybe that's a fair argument, but one other thing that people are not looking at is the impact that it's going to have in the immediacy. Because once these antiretroviral drugs stop being distributed, and that very scary thought that Mika has brought out, that people are actually sleeping with people who are HIV positive, but they're not getting infected because of the weakening of that viral load. And this is something that people are not quite paying attention to. The other thing is also the way things are coming so fast here in the US. There are other things that are being gutted. And I like the fact that Mika talked about we need to look at what's in between the lines, or rather what is not being said on the media, because the media will report the explosive stuff. But people are not talking about how some of these health policies are going to start affecting the hospitals you go to, the non-profit hospitals that you go to, that are going to affect the cost of drugs, that are going to affect the cost of insurance premiums that you pay. And this will affect everybody across the board, Republicans or Democrats. But before we get into more details, let's go back to studio to Mr. Uno Mike himself. Tell us about your week and tell us what's the most explosive thing that you had this week. Uno Mike, twende kazi.
Hey, Jesus is love. Funke mwadhani huku Facebook imeleta wahala. Anyway, my fans, karibuni sana. It has been, put it this way, it has been, there's so much going on. Actually, just Super Producer has been gracious enough to share with us a summary of how many things he has done this past week. So the twice impeached convicted guy has passed in the last 15 days. This week, he has done 15 things this week. One, proposed the US to take over Gaza. Two, planned to put thousands of USAID staff on leave, which you guys have mentioned. Three, imposed tariffs on China and pullback threats on neighbors. Mexico and Canada, we know how that went. Pressed ahead with a plan to incentivize federal workers to resign, which has been put on pause by a judge, a federal court judge. Sanctioned the International Criminal Court. I think you guys saw that. Ordered strikes against Islamic State group in Somalia. I think many people might have missed that. Withdrew United Nations from institutions. We know those ones. UNRWA, UNESCO and all that. I think you mentioned that.
Yes.
Sent first plane of deportees to Guantanamo. So already sent a plane of Indians to India.
Or the 100. Those 100.
The 100.
Yes.
Alafu kuna wa Kenya na wa Somali walifika 254. Demanded Ukraine provide rare earth resources. Banned transgender competitors in women's sports. Released water from dams in California that is actually supposed to be saved for the farmers when summer comes. Announced task force to tackle anti-Christian bias. I didn't even know that. Intervened in a dispute in the Gulf world. Removed climate change mentions from government websites. He's doing a lot of removing of stuff. And increased access to masks. Dodge, of course, meona hiyo. This week, what has bothered many people was that one, the entry and re-entry. If you have a passport or you have dual citizenship.
Yeah. What?
The misinformation about it.
That.
No, si umesikia amesema if you have a passport, alafu akaniangalia.
Nimekuangalia because there was a lot of no. I was not looking at you specifically to say anything.
No, he's addressing that screenshot that was saying an Ivorian woman his passport was taken away, right?
Correct, Mikas. Yes, you're saying he's addressing that, but then he was also addressing me.
But
think about it.
But in addition to all that, there's so much going on, you don't know what to process. But I remember there's I watched this thing. There's an interview that was done by one of his henchmen a while back. It's called Mars of Velocity, where all you're doing is just shooting stuff out because media is just gonna grab and bite and go with it. Well, that is happening. It's a distraction because huku kwingine kuna vitu zinafanywa. The USAID thing, I think so many people were so focused on the loss and what's going to happen and PEPFAR, whatever, and sijui there's a lot of money being wasted, sijui what, sijui gas, sijui this, sijui what. People forget that apparently USAID spends $2 billion from the US economy. What do they get? Grains, cars, supplies. So all those things that are being taken, agriculture, whatever stuff. So in as much as wanafikiri wanaumiza wase huko, hata huku, farmers are going to get affected. small businesses, like it's going to be a cascading effect of problems. But the Republicans have packaged it in such a way that you don't look at this. What we're doing is we're saving you billions and billions of dollars.
The funny thing about this whole USAID debacle is that they said it's a way. They were saying it's a way that they were corrupting. They were using USAID as a way to corrupt and steal money. And so far, the audit that has been done on USAID, it's been that every bit of dollar that has been used has been accounted for. The only thing they're mad with is they're mad with payments that they're not happy with. So they're saying it's corruption, like the payments to the news agencies. They are saying it's corruption, but it's not corruption because these news agencies are allowed to have donors, and different donors do that. And USAID is doing that in a way of promoting equal media opportunity because they're donating money through the side. And guess what? One of his wives and one of his daughter-in-laws, his wife and his daughter-in-law's charities get money from USAID. So there's money that is actually coming from this organization that's actually going to also Republicans. But because they're trying to look for a way to share, because let's be honest here, there's a certain company that's gotten $72 billion funding in 3 weeks' time since Trump won the elections. We know who's the owner of those companies, right? It's just a thing of taking from your right pocket, sewing it up, and putting it into your left pocket and looking out on the side. It's a horrendous witch hunt of risk of trying to figure out how do we put it. You go and put sanctions to Mexico and Canada. You know all your automakers in the country have factories there because of cheap labor. But then your guy, his factories are in America. So you put sanctions so that these other cars can become more expensive, so that your guy can sell more cars and his factories can grow, and you're still funding him. Like, if it's corruption, it's what they're doing. It's what they're doing. You cannot give somebody just access to payment system, the payment system for everybody's payment. Basically, everybody's financial records are in the hand of one man. People who don't need that access to do. Why are you looking at people's payment records of Social Security? How is that government affected?
Yeah, so so many things are happening, and I think from the way I see it, this is what you call death by 1,000 cuts. So you don't stab someone dramatically with a dagger, but you just slowly start paper cuts, pole, 1,000 paper cuts. It at some point will start affecting you. And I think that's what's happening when they're throwing, some big explosive news, like we're going to release the classified documents for RFK or rather for JFK and Martin Luther King. They're there secretly, dismantling other things that allow processes to work. So at this point, let me read a couple of comments. There's quite a number of comments that are coming in on YouTube. Apologies. We were having issues with Facebook today. So today we're exclusively on YouTube. And Washeke here said Africa needs to stop its dependence of foreign aid, but it needs to be a systemic and multi approach, winning off, not abrupt withdrawal. And then Pan-African Nation Karibu Sana, he says the amount of money flowing around in Kenya is stupendous. So many social impact funding organizations. Anyone who knows how to look for funding can get it. That's why I say Kenya is the capital of aid in Africa. And Pan-African, maybe just keep telling us some more. What do you think should happen now that the aid has stopped flowing, especially from USAID? And I can see also Marimu is in the building, Karibu Sana. And then I can also see Apa, I believe this is Hani Galgeri, I believe this is Tabitha. She says, which companies are those? Some examples. And then Angie here is saying a large number of expenses are very dodgy. And then Pan Africa is saying there's a lot of social impact funding that funding does in Kenya that people don't know. E.g., USAID and European agencies fund trademark East Africa. They unlock trade, e.g., funding Mombasa port efficiency. And then Wairimo is telling UNO Kali water issue is so distorted by these people. It's not even funny. It's been raining heavily for the last few days. Why open up dams? I can see Resilient is also in the building, and Resilient says $50 million to Gaza for condoms. Have you stopped to ask yourself why Democrats are up in arms? Because their corruption has been uncovered. This is just a scratch on the surface.
But now, that been debunked?
Resilient, please give us proof.
Yes.
That there were $50 million in condoms that were sent to Gaza. Please give us proof. We're not saying you're right or wrong, but please share with us your proof.
He's actually Resilient is wrong.
Yeah. No, but let him share with us his proof of where he had this or where he got this, and we'll analyze that. And then here, Tabitha is saying people are saying that Kenya should pull up its socks and do this without USAID funding, but they forget that we don't have good governance structure, systems, and funding. We might be vulnerable after this. And Pablo is saying, I appropriate Mika's perspectives, looking at news beyond the screaming headlines. And I think that's something that we'll start paying attention to, where we will start looking at this beyond the screaming headlines. There was a question here I deliberately skipped from Warimo. I want us to talk about this a bit. Warimo is asking, Ali, very curious, wanasemaje msikitini kuhusu Gaza? Yeah, so
wow,
this has been
that is so loaded. Yeah, it's like you almost need a shovel. Yeah, you need
I think Ali has been expecting this question since the day this guy said the moment alijua hiyo story ya Gaza. I think Ali alijua tu hii ni swali najua litaulizwa kila mahali nitaenda.
Na itakuja.
Yeah, so and it's a fair question. It's a very fair question because since the October 7th attacks and the attacks that came from Israel to Gaza, there has been, a rift between Muslims and the Democratic Party because of the genocide that the Biden government allowed to happen in Gaza. I think I want to give a little bit of background, for people to understand where Muslims have been and our journey through the Democratic Party. So before September 11th, I wasn't in the United States by then. I think in this group, maybe only Omosh was here. Maybe Uno Mike had already come here. But I think 9/11 is when Muslims shifted. Muslims had mostly been part of the Republican, had mostly been part of the Republican Party, but the shift came, after 9/11, when the Republicans just started bombing Muslim countries, and the Democrats came in defense to them. So there was a sudden shift from the Republican Party to the Democrats, because Muslims had stuck with the Republican Party before that, because of the family value issues, issues to do with LGBTQ and such things. But that's a point when Muslims shifted, when they decided the issue of our people being killed is much heavier than staying in the Republican Party because they oppose LGBTQ and the likes. And Muslims have predominantly remained in the Republican Party. However, there were still holdouts within the Muslim community. And let me say specifically within mostly Arab communities that stayed with the Republicans. Then came October 7th, when there were attacks and the attacks that followed in Gaza from Israel. And there was a sudden shift when it was seen as the Joe Biden's government was complicit with Israelis in letting the bombing continued, and the killings happened. So there was a mixture of feelings. So Muslims became united in saying that we are not going to vote for Joe Biden. And I will say that I was among that group, after a very long contemplation. I wasn't going to vote for Joe Biden. And let's also be clear, there was a lot of people, even outside the Muslim community, within the Democratic Party, who were fed up with Joe Biden for a number of reasons. So that happened. And then came the moment when Biden said that he will no longer run for president, and Kamala Harris became the candidate. So there was a new opening. And at that particular moment, I think there was a lot of goodwill in the community, despite her deputizing Joe Biden. There was a lot of goodwill, and they were like, this is a new person. Let's hear what she's going to say. And then because at that point, the direction was, let's vote for a third party as a protest to the Democrats. And people were trending towards voting for Jill Stein, who was running with the Green Party. So that's where a lot of people were being directed towards, and a lot of people were on board. But when Kamala came on board, there was an opening, and people are like, okay, let's wait and listen to what she has to say. Then Kamala's campaign made a decision to shut out pro-Palestine voices at the convention, in the campaign, and everywhere. They were completely shut out. So I think that shutting out, it started bringing some confusion in the community, because there were people who are saying, okay, Joe Biden is no longer in the polls, so let's vote for Kamala. There are people who are like, no, let's just continue with what we had planned, to vote for Jill Stein and protest against the Democrats. And then Pitina ikaingia, came a group of people. And this group of people, by the way, I came to learn that most of them, these ones who said now, let's vote for Trump, these are people who had secretly, because from back in 9/11, there were some people, there were some Muslims who held out and remained Republican, and they remained there secretly. So I think these are the people who suddenly came out, and they became loud, and they were like, let's give our vote to Donald Trump because of this. So that left a lot of confusion in the community. But after all was said and done, it's only 20% of the Muslim population that ended up voting for Trump. And when I say 20%, within this 20%, there was a very significant group of people who had just been Republican and even voted for Trump in Trump's first and second elections. But then I think where I feel, and this was something that was happening in real time, where I feel like we might have got it wrong, and now this is looking in hindsight, because when these things were happening, there were people that were dying and things were happening very fast. So looking in hindsight, I think where we might have, maybe made a mistake was to obliterate the non-Muslim coalition that used to support Muslim issues within the Democratic Party. So I think this really angered a lot of people. And you saw a lot of videos of a lot of these Arab influencers who, and these are very few people who came out publicly and told people to vote for Trump. This really angered a lot of people. And I think this has lost us a coalition that always supported not only Gaza issues, but a lot of Muslim issues because of this situation. So I think there wasn't, a long-term strategy in looking at how things are going to happen. And I think there was some empathy towards wanting to put a protest vote towards Jill Stein. The thing that annoyed people the most was now these people who came out openly and they were going to Trump rallies and giving speeches And most of these big influencers who are Trump, they have gone into hiding. And they're not telling us anything. And I think this is a point where I would love for those, be they scholars or be they any kind of Muslim influencers who are actively telling people to go vote for Trump, to just come out and apologize and say, like, we're sorry, we were wrong. For whatever reason, I mean, Trump had already shown us who he is. So I never quite understood that part myself. And of course, you'll remember, for example, like Black American Muslims, who are very significant number of, as a percentage of the overall Muslim population, they never voted. They never voted on the Jill Stein. They never voted. Maybe there might have been a few voted, but I think a majority of them still voted for Kamala. But I think I also want to make it clear that because the perception that's being thrown out there right now is a perception like all Muslims voted for Trump.
Yeah.
It was a very, very small percentage. To be specific, it was 20%. I mean, 20% is not a small percentage, but if there was any difference that the Muslim vote would have made, if 100% of Muslims voted for Kamala, it may have been in Michigan only, and that still would not have won us the presidency. And I'm going to throw this in the studio because I know each of you have a lot of things to say. Maybe to Uno Mike, and then we'll go one by one, and I'll also sample out the comments. Uno Mike, 20 cars.
Thank you for providing that context and the history, and also clarifying. I think sometimes the issue becomes, so many times, okay, let me start by saying, sometimes the squeakiest wheel gets the grease. So the guys who are the loudest about the atrocities are the ones probably who are able to sway. And there's some people who came out and said, I know of guys, the issue was Genocide Joe. And with that moniker, and then Kamala comes in, and of course, I think also at the same time, she did not help the cause by blocking the Palestinian, I'm gonna call it delegation during the DNC, but it's one of those situations that, without using so much word salad, it's like you really have to not use a hammer, but you have to scalpel this thing and to get it. Unfortunately, with everything that is going on and the way things are, it's always like you guys, because guess what? Latinos are facing the same thing. Because there are some guys who are very vocal, some Venezuelans, Cubans, some Latinos over there, they'll be voting for Trump, and then next thing you know, TPS is on the chopping block. And some of those guys had been here, even the protections for the Cubans, Hondurans, I think, and Venezuelans, all those are on the chopping block. Zinaenda. And now they're coming out to realize that, it is hard sometimes to comprehend when a guy tells you, this guy, even in his first term, this is what he did. He's capable of doing it. He said he was going to do a Muslim ban. Be careful. Yes, I understand. Okay, I cannot say that I understand. But at least there's a level of negotiation. You can have a negotiating room and you can have a tussle and tell Kamala, listen, maze hapa ukicheza hapa hatutakosana. But Donald Trump this guy is not that. Say ideally is either you know who he reminds me of? King Joffrey. For those guys who watched Game of Thrones, it is his way or the highway. If you disagree with him, unachujwa, you're thrown to the wolves. But it is one of those, I think, there needs to be a deeper lens to be looked into, and not just lumping all career with Muslims, because there are some Muslims who have come out and said, they have actually even come out, some Muslims have come out and called out those guys. I remember that one guy, that Yemeni cleric, Yemeni American, the guy who was interviewed.
Michigan.
It was Michigan.
Was that the guy? I think.
Was it?
Yeah,
It was Michigan.
He was from Michigan.
He was even interviewed on Zeteo.
Hassan.
And Zeteo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the guy literally said they even had a meeting with Korea. He's gonna be, and I mean, Ahmed is like, this is the same guy who, when you guys were being bombed, he was not saying anything.
Hey.
So, but I think there needs to be a different perspective where instead of lumping, it's good to drill down. And again, those guys who were in support of, because you really cannot go out and identify everyone that voted for Trump. What you can do is you can probably just know the guys who are vocal about him on social media. Now and be, what do you have to say now? Because we have our brother over here. He came out and said after a long time,
he struggled.
He struggled with this thing.
He had malaria.
Malaria,
Yes.
dengue,
Yes.
shiode.
Yes.
Even he had this
Cholera. Yes.
typhoid,
Yote.
shiode.
Yes.
So, and then he comes out and says, you know what? Kura yangu inaenda kwa mama.
Yeah, and we over here, I think we are, and maybe people are not. This thing was very serious.
It was,
because what Ali was seeing on a day-to-day basis, and I'm sure he'll break it down maybe if we get time some more, was what he was seeing as he goes Mskitini, and the discussions and the people affected by things happening in Gaza on a daily basis. The people who they even help, kuna mtu amefiwa na kuna mchango ama you're just there for them.
Yeah,
it was an everyday thing for him. It's not, it wasn't something that is just saying, because I'm Muslim then I'm banding or I'm on that bandwagon. And you see the numbers and you're like, wait a minute, what is it gonna take for people to wake up? So understandably so, there's a certain way that Ali was feeling personally when looking at this, and because he was seeing these things in front of him, happening in front of him, and
don't forget he's in those spaces with our brothers and sisters in those spaces on a daily basis, because we're not privy to that.
Yes, no,
we're not privy to that.
We're not.
The only way we are privy is by him telling us.
Correct. By osmosis.
Yes,
right. And as things are happening in front of him, he's saying, okay, damned if I do, damned if I don't.
Yeah.
Hapa inaonekana I'm doing none.
Because logic would have it, who will say the twice impeached guy, he's coming out and saying ile jangi lingine Nyetanyamba is doing an awesome job. I'm like, okay, hold up. How can this guy anasema ana support say anamwambia this guy is doing an awesome job, knowing exactly what he's doing? And I'm like, okay, because there's also that thing of me trying to comprehend that, okay, fine, tunanyanyaswa, but the supposed guy who might be coming in is supporting the guy who is nyanyasing us. Mse mwingine is tunanyanyaswa, but unaona ni kama is like playing double dutch. Anajaribu kutoe the line ako pale katikati, of course, because you know what, it's an electioneering season.
Yes,
and there are consequences because when you look like even there are some guys who are primaried by those Zionist guys. What's the Bowman, Cory Bush, all those guys were primaried by these Zionistas. Na wakapoteza career. So them, they were successful in if you're not for them, wewe nje. But it's politics also.
There's politics, but also as a human being, if all I did was just sit back and remember what this guy did in his first term, day one, as a Muslim, that's me. There's no way I'm voting for this guy. I don't care what song he sings.
Okay, fine.
That's me.
Then
I'm just saying, if I am just looking at his body of work, what he has done.
But then
Go ahead.
Let me say something here.
Yes.
I'm in the camp of where if you're doing one thing to punish somebody, if me, I am close with Ali, and I know Ali doesn't like the smell of shit, alafu nikosane na Ali, nimkasirikie, niende nichukue shonde nikuje nipake Ali, pia mi nimejipaka hiyo shonde.
Correct.
That is how I usually look at things, like doing things out of anger to punish
Spite.
somebody else
Yes.
usually end up hurting you.
Mm.
But then also, I get to understand the human aspect, and emotion usually tends to be, we react to the most current emotion we're feeling. We don't react to emotions we felt yesterday or the day before yesterday. We react to what we're feeling
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
So I can understand the anger, especially if you've seen the death, you've seen people who are suffering from the death, you see
Yes.
how
Yes.
it's going on. I can understand that anger. And that makes me, I'm usually torn when this topic comes in. I am more like doing something to punish something and you know it's gonna hurt you yourself. It doesn't really make sense. But then you also try to understand from that pain because you look at it and you'll be like, if it was me in my own shoes, how would I have reacted at that particular time? Unaona? So uh, as Alia says, there are those who voted or who stayed out of the vote based on what they were seeing.
Correct.
But then there were those who you know just manipulate you. Turn around and want to fight back, it will be too late.
You know, Mika, that part about being torn for me, I feel what you're saying, but again, like I said, if I was just looking at things in totality from where this guy has shown us what he is, I would have given. You looked at his whole body of work. I wouldn't be dealing na vitu za sasa. I mean, yes, I will do the vitu za sasa, yes, but him already ashaonyesha kadi yake. Yani, he already showed his cards according to me. So there's nothing he can do for me. That's why I was saying what I was saying. But I get what you're saying about the things that you're dealing with the now and what you're seeing and how that affects your emotions moving forward past that point. And as we have seen, it's I just, for humanity, if you're as a human being, it's sad. This Gaza thing is sad. I mean, Yasser Arafat, yani alikufa how long ago, and how long were they fighting? So if you are to think from that time, and we are to date, we still have a Gaza issue.
Mm-hmm.
That should tell us something. That there's something wrong from a human perspective with this whole thing. There's just no way of saying, this. It's wrong. It's wrong in all sorts of ways. And we all know who the person who's wrong. And that's the sad part. And you know, as long as you are against, then there's always repercussions.
You know, because I'm looking at some comments over here. Wairimo, I've posted a link over there. It was on the BBC. Even us, that one of that commentary was, I think that one was done chini ya maji. Some of those Al Shabaab, they're attacking the Keria.
No, the attack for Al Shabaab alijisifu.
Yeah,
he tweeted about it.
But yeah, so but because she's talking about here, I can't find any African. Oh yes, sorry, I don't think you're gonna get. I don't. Yeah, because it's only on BBC. It's only on BBC and maybe AP News, Reuters.
Mm-hmm.
You find them there, but African
Correct.
commentary, and that's an issue we've always had because we never really tell our own stories.
But is it because our people don't know how to report, or what, or do they just because even when you look at the news within Kenya, like half the stuff, it's like it's regurgitated and like they all got it from one source. Like guys all went to AP and pulled stuff. So you're like, wait a minute, you have Nation, you have Standard, you guys are on the ground. Kwani hamuna ma reporter? Like what are you doing? Like why are you going to get content from a guy of Reuters who basically is a freelance chap and is selling this story to all of you? You know, it's almost like you're selling to the highest bidder and you're not even doing the due diligence of even writing, that's even taking the story and rewriting it correctly. So, and I don't know if when you buy it, AP says you have to say, okay, do it word for word and say that this is from AP. I don't know how they
I wish
do those
I wish
stories.
Bandia was here. He could tell us. But like how he was talking about how sometimes even just producing a segment like that, it's a lot of money. You need equipment and stuff like that. But my question usually goes here: these guys make a lot of money. These media houses make a lot of money.
Correct.
They do make a lot of money. Yes, sometimes you can even tell sometimes the quality of the sound that they're using, the quality of the video, the whatever. It is madhogs. Yeah. But they make a lot of money. So it's like they have a lot of money, but they're spendthrifts.
Well, maybe the money is being spent a different way. You would think.
True.
You would think that obviously as a business you make your money and you want to put your money back in the business.
But it's going to fill out the pockets. Yeah, it's going to fill out the pockets. So,
I don't know what business model they use, but
yeah. So anyway, it's and this is just the beginning.
Correct.
It's not even 6 months.
Yeah.
It's just 1 month.
Yeah. We need to, like Mika was saying, I don't know is this a point where you say you pull up your socks, you tighten your belts, and if you are not used to mboga, you start making mboga taste good, or then we already have an egg shortage. Mtu kama mimi mazeni kwa masafarings.
When him say 1 egg a day or 2 eggs a day.
Dos
a day.
No,
dos per sitting.
No.
How many sittings?
No, dos a day.
But so here's the thing. But here's the thing though. And this is when I have an issue with Democrats, because Democrats and messaging, that has always been, and I think will always be, an issue with them. Because guess what?
Is it the messaging or is it the enforcement? They're coming out na kifua na kusema
it's messaging. It is messaging. Because guess what? Okay. Because you think about it. So Trump comes out and says USAID done.
Yes.
They focus on they focus on the aid part, but the aid itself is not it's not aid. Like even the definition of, okay, do you know what USAID means?
No, what does it mean? I know US means United States.
And the aid, people think it's just aid.
It's agency.
Aid. It is what? Agency for International Development.
It's not a
kupeana
Asha.
pesa. Asha.
Yeah.
It is not.
So actually, just not to move away from the discussion we're having, there was actually a question here that was coming from Hani Galnjeri Tabitha.
Oh, yes.
She's asking,
we're waiting for you to come back.
20% of the Muslims voted for Trump. What percentage of the Muslim population did not vote? And what percentage voted for Jill Stein? I have to pull up those numbers again, but I think the percentage of Muslims that did not vote was consistent with the apathy that came from also the overall population, because Muslims tended to have like a high voting rate. So the apathy that was with the overall population, I don't have the specific numbers with me. If there's someone who can check, yes, there was quite a significant number of Muslims who voted for Jill Stein. I know especially in Michigan, especially in the Dearborn area, there was quite a significant number who voted for Jill Stein, and most of them were, I would say, a majority of the Muslims who voted for Jill Stein were ethnic Arabs. One thing that I also want people to remember, because sometimes what Arabs do is sometimes thrown to mean all Muslims have done it. Arabs are very small. They're less than 1 in 5 across the world. Less than 1 in 5 Muslims is Arab. Like there are very few when you look at the overall population. But sometimes, because they get these platforms and they have these big organizations and they speak, so sometimes people tend to think that these are things that are being done by all Muslims. There's a lot of different voices within the community, but for one reason or another, the Arab ones are the ones that get amplified. There are Turkish voices, there are Nigerian voices, there are voices, like from countries that you would probably never associate with Islam, like especially a lot of different African countries. And these voices sometimes don't get amplified. And part of the conversations that were happening, because remember also Sudan was happening at the same time. So within our spaces, there was that discussion that was happening, as many people have died in Sudan, but we are not seeing the loudness, and we are not seeing the same energy that that Africans show and other groups of Muslims show when things are happening in the Middle East than when things are happening to African Muslims, not just Sudan, even Somalia. And I've started seeing
Cameroon.
a shift in that. Where now you'll hear Sudan being talked about in the mosque. You'll hear Somalia being talked about in the mosque, which I think is one good thing that came out of all this, in that a lot of other voices that were not necessarily being heard have come out. So this is something that's very difficult. And just to wrap this conversation, I said at a personal level, because there was a conversation that we're having outside the show in the WhatsApp group that we have, whereby there's this expectation that we have to put everyone in the same bucket. And I can understand why people would want to put, like those who voted for Trump, those who voted for Jill Stein, and those who sat out, all in the same bucket. I understand why people would want to do that, and there's no problem if that's how you feel. For me personally, because of the personal day-to-day experience I had with this issue, I cannot put those three groups in the same bucket. And that was part of the difficulty that I had to deal with. Imagine, I came to the US in 2003, 2004. So I've always been a Democrat. Like there's never been a question. I have never thought twice about do I need to look at the Republican president? I have always voted Democrat. So this was the first time, that I had to take, like a step back because of what was happening. So yeah, and I think the people who've been tuned into the show also, noted, my progression from when I said I'm not going to vote for Biden to when Kamala came into office, and very quickly, I boarded that Kamala bus. I do understand, I still have some empathy, with the people, especially those who are directly or indirectly affected, who decided to sit this out, or who decided to take the Jill Stein direction. This is also a lesson to the community on how politics works. Because right now, there are no Democrats who are sitting out there and wondering, oh my goodness, we were punished. They're going about their lives. And that's what I think Mehdi Hassan tried to put out, because politics is a contact sport. It's not a logical game. It's a rough sport. That's what Mehdi Hassan tried to put out, and I applaud him for his courage, for speaking out at that time when it was very unpopular. But I think this is a lesson that that we want to learn moving forward. Now, unless there's someone else who has a word or two about this, I want to move on to the next topic, and maybe
let's move on.
Maybe we can go through, some of the comments, because a lot of these comments were coming in
Thick and fast and furious.
so thick and fast. And Apa Arimu is saying, Ali, thanks for that. I think in Ohio too, there are some leaders that have gone Chiniawaba. That's true. Ohio has also very
Ohio
big
was
Muslims.
also one of those. Yeah.
Let's not forget the Somalis in Minnesota too, because we're about to talk about Somalis in Kenya. The Somali leaders. I'm not gonna label all Somalis in Minnesota. Somalis, I love you. You guys are fam. But there was a few of your leaders who went out and deliberately endorsed Donald Trump. If you're one of those leaders, or if you know one of those leaders, please call them out. Please tell them to come back to the community, and please tell them to apologize for that. Because right now, especially a lot of people who support Trump are saying, oh, these are things he's just saying. No, when Trump says stuff, he does it. Like all these things, birthright, citizenship, people are like, oh no, he's just saying it, he's not going to do it, he's doing it. So what he said in Gaza, there's something definitely that they're working on Chiniamaji and not telling us. But he said this out loud, first of all, to see how it's going to be received politically. But yeah, this was a very difficult time that a lot of us, and not just Muslims, a lot of people of conscience who are looking at people that were being killed in Gaza, and there was a lot of conflict in the political, the normal political held norms that we had. Apa Angie anasema, I disagree that Trump will throw you out if you disagree with him. Many people in his administration have disagreed with him at some point. He's very forgiving. And then Apa Ari was saying, I can't find African commentary on Somali bombing last Saturday. And I think that's part of what you're talking in the studio. There's a problem with African media whereby it's just regurgitation, especially when it comes to international affairs. The average Kenyan, because of what they consume, or the average African, they don't understand how, for example, the conflict in Congo will affect them, and this is an African issue.
Mm-hmm.
They do not understand, like the repercussions of these freeze in aid programs that the U.S. handles, because there's no proper sensitization on international affairs. Because I was seeing some people in Kenya who were very loud in celebrating that USAID is being kicked out, not knowing that the jobs that they were doing were indirectly being funded by USAID. I know one particular person who actually lost a job, and he was one of the people who was busy celebrating when this news came out. He didn't have an understanding that the organization he was working for was being indirectly funded by a program that was being funded by USAID. So those are the things that I think need to be rectified, such that people understand how these international issues are gonna affect them. And then here I have Paul Zengu Pablo saying, Ali hujasema ako on location wapi ama ako Dodge ako Dodge auditing accounts za Buroti Maguta. I'm actually in the beautiful city of Tampa, Florida. I don't know whether you guys can see this beautiful view I have here. Ama nikifungwa hii hapa, then watu wataanza kusema nimekula sijui pesa za Dodge sasa na najienjoy. No, I'm here on a work assignment. Yes, I'm in the beautiful city of Tampa, Florida. And this city, man, is so white. My goodness, like it's a very beautiful city, but it is so white. It feels Florida. Like a MAGA reunion.
Yeah, in Florida. Who goes to Florida to retire?
Where? No, Nikazi hapa.
But that's what I'm telling you. The people who are there are all whiteys. That's what they do. They retire.
And some of these events we attend. The event I'm attending actually is a trade show for country clubs. Yeah, and the event I'm attending is a trade show for country clubs. And country clubs, they're very white-centric organizations. So you can imagine. And these spaces, there are very few black people. So tukionana, watu nafurahi sana. Like I've met, like a Kenyan or two there. It's always very good to meet other Kenyans in such spaces, and to meet also, like other black people, because we are very rare. So people are seeing me wananikumbuka because I'm the one black guy in the middle of, I don't know, 5,000, 6,000 people. But it's a beautiful city. But at the end of the day, ni Florida. So yeah.
Did you tell them Pablo, Did you tell them you're Muslim? I'm just asking for a friend. Did you tell them you're Muslim? I'm asking for a friend.
Well, my name golf
course iko huko. Ile golf course ile inajulikana ile.
Golf. Yeah, actually, your golf course, there was someone who was showing me pictures. Saa mimi hata ma golf course za huku. Me, like me golf, the golf I know ni ile mini golf. Ile unaenda kucheza, ile unalipa 20 bob. That's the golf I know. Hii ingine sijui, maybe Mika ndo anajua golf ingine, but yeah, but Pablo, there we go. I have revealed my location, and then hapa Roslyn Omala. Real names are being revealed on YouTube. Nasema Ali, it might be too late for an apology from Trump promoters. We are all suffering in peace regardless of party affiliation. That's very true. You know, like everyone.
I don't know about the peace part, but we are
Trump is very forgiving.
Yes, that's what Angie said. Angie said Trump is very forgiving. He's a very forgiving person, and he's not vindictive, and he does not what's the right word? He does not target people.
What do you mean he's not vindictive? And we have any FBI agent who worked the January 6th has been fired. All the DOJ prosecutors, everybody who worked on his cases for the DOJ have been fired.
John Bolton.
What do you mean he's not vindictive?
But Angie said, Angie said, me, I didn't say. But just
she said that.
Okay, well, example. Okay, vindictive was my word. Sorry. She said that she disagrees with Trump, that Trump will throw you out if you disagree with him. She said many people in his administration have disagreed with him at some point.
When Vivek yuko wapi?
He's a very forgiving guy. Vivek.
Why isn't he with his former Secretary of Defense?
Vivek
Pompeo.
Angie.
Why? Why does he have a?
Why are you people attacking Angie? I mean me.
Jay, and what about what
happened? Cheat.
Whatever happened to Korea, John Bolton?
So I think what Angie is not telling us is that what Angie is not telling us is that you have to kiss his ring. So even if you had a disagreement before with him, before he accepts you, you have to kiss his ring. You have to lick his ass.
You have to bend the knee.
No, kuomba msamaha is one thing. You have to kiss his ring. You have to lick his ass. Waswahili tunasema ni lazima umsujudie. And that's idolatry.
In other words,
which is what all these people did.
Before you even do that, you have to bend the knee.
Hey.
Yeah.
Surely you guys.
So
hey.
But it's okay.
So Angie, that's what you have to do to Trump. Before he accepts you. He accepts you back.
Nyinyi ni watu wa nini? Nyinyi ni watu wa Dodge. You are Democrats officially getting exposed. That's what Angie said. Me, I'm just reading what Angie said.
And
Angie, you can call him at any time. Who? Angie. Hey, she says, Omosh, as an example, J.D. Vance once compared Trump to Hitler. He still chose him as VP.
We know that.
Google it.
Yes, because he kissed his ass. He kissed his ring. That's the reason why J.D. Vance was chosen as the vice president.
But if you guys remember, was it Nancy Mace or somebody, the beach butch, the whatever, the butch beach here, somebody talked about the White House smelling like curry.
Yeah.
Because of Kamala, right?
Yes.
I wonder if the VP residence is smelling like curry. But carry on, Ali.
Anyway, watu ni wabaya. Muendelee tu kusoma hizo comments. Juu hata Rezila
chicken vindaloo.
Surely.
Na kuna naan hapo. Na tandori.
Yeah. Okay. I want us to go to this other story so that
we don't digress.
Yeah, so that we don't lose it and we don't miss out on time. We started late. Now we know that in Kenya, individuals of Somali descent have historically faced stringent vetting procedures when applying for national identity cards. And there was a move by the president recently to remove this that was extremely controversial. But I want to give a brief background of vetting because most Kenyans are not aware or familiar with this because most other people do not go through this. Like it started with the Somali community and at some point it was spread out to the rest of the Muslim community. So this vetting process, Mika, we are gonna get to you. But the vetting process was established in the 60s following the shifter insurgency, like a cessation conflict where some ethnic Somalis sought to join Somalia. So this is also another part of Kenyan history that I think also a lot of people don't know, because we have an education system that leaves out some very important moments in history. Now, before we got independence, 1963, so the settlers who came to Kenya and the part that was called Kenya, they took the White Highlands and other certain parts of Kenya. So when you look at that border, when Kenya became a colony, because initially the settlers came in, but Kenya officially became a colony in 1920. And at that time, the Kenyan coast was, it was a protectorate, but it was part of the Sultanate of Zanzibar, because the Sultanate of Zanzibar existed until 1964. So the 10-mile strip in the coast was part of that. And then Northeastern Province, what we know today as Northeastern Province, Garissa, Wajir, and Mandera, I believe also some parts of Eastern, Upper Eastern, like maybe Marsabit and Isiolo, but I'm not 100% sure where the border was actually drawn. These were referred to as the Northern Frontier Districts, NFD, which were being governed separately. So before we got independence in 1961, there was a referendum that was done. Before we got independence in 1963, there was a referendum done in the Northern Frontier Districts, where the people there were asked by the British a very simple question. Because at that point, there was a process already of giving Kenya independence going on. The question was, do you want to be part of Kenya, or do you want to join your cousins and be part of the Greater Somalia? Because remember, Somalia was divided into two. The Somalia that we know today, the number 7 map, the Horn of Africa, the southern part that borders Kenya was under Italian administration. And the northern part, where Hargeisa is, or I think commonly referred to as Somaliland, was under British rule. So it was a mishmash of many things going on. So the British part of Somali and the Italian part of Somali came together to form what's known as Somalia. And then there was the conversation of having that northeastern part of Kenya join Somalia and be the Greater Somalia. There was also a part of Ethiopia called Ogaden, that's a Somali province. There was also discussions about that part, which I'm not very privy to. But then the results of that referendum came out and it went against British expectations. 90%, they overwhelmingly decided that they want to join their brothers in Somalia. And I don't know why the British were shocked, because it was natural for people to want to be with a group that with a group of their brothers, the people who are like them. So what ended up happening, because the British did not want to have that strong Greater Somalia, they force-fed the northern frontier districts. It was force-fed into this map that we call Kenya today. And all these shenanigans was happening in Lancaster. And then also there was some shenanigans that happened with a contingent from the coast that went there, because at that point, the coastal part, they still wanted to be with their brothers in Zanzibar, with the Sultanate of Zanzibar, because culturally they were very aligned. But there was some details that I cannot go through today because it's a very long and winding story. But basically what ended up happening is that the Kenyan coast was also forced into Kenya. In fact, if you look at the treaty that was signed during independence, that's when the 10-mile strip and the islands of Lamu and those other parts became part of Kenya. And all this was force-feeding. So there was resistance that came from the northern frontier districts because they did not want to join Kenya. And that's what was referred to as the shifter wars. Yeah. So those shifter wars is what initiated this process called vetting that was established in the 60s. because there was a group of people there who were being referred to as secessionists, where there were people who are still seeking to join Somalia. So a lot of people there, when it started, it was just a requirement for applicants to undergo a thorough scrutiny by security committees comprising of officials from National Intelligence Service, local chiefs, police, and elders. Applicants were often asked to provide extensive documentation and answer detailed questions about their lineage and place of birth. Critics have long argued that this process was discriminatory, leading to delays, denials, and significant challenges for many ethnic Somalis in obtaining essential identification. So that generation that wanted to secede, like it died off, but this thing continued. It continued, and it was extended to other communities. And I know there's this argument, there's an apologist argument that comes out that says the vetting happens in all border communities. Yes, there's some level of it that happens, but none of it happens like the way it's done to the Somali community and to Muslim communities. Within the Somali community, and even with a lot of Muslim communities in the coast, there was a point when it was normal to have someone who's 24, 25 years old, still running after an ID. These are people who are born in Kenya. They have a Kenyan birth certificate. They went through a Kenyan education. They have a Kenyan school living certificate, but you're still being asked to produce a birth certificate of your grandfather. Imagine if you're born in the 80s, your grandfather, if you're born, for example, in 1980, your grandfather was born in 1899. Where are you getting that birth certificate? Like who was giving out birth certificates in 1899 when people were being born? Now I understand the anxiety that people have because the president, William Ruto, who is known to be a liar, who is known to be a manipulator, and who's known to be a thief. He came and said that this process is coming to an end.
Kasongo.
And I think the things that preceded it are what got people jittery. Because I think it was reported, I want to say it was by, I don't know if it's a Daily Nation or the Standard. Let me confirm that here and just read what they said. So it says, it started with the court invalidating 2019 census results for Garissa, Mandera, and Wajir counties. Then President Ruto scrapped vetting for northeastern Kenya residents while applying for IDs and later opened a new registration center in Garissa. Analysts opined that the president could be applying the hunter-gatherer strategy, moving on to plant in the richer soils where it could yield him 2.1 million votes in 2027. So is there a possibility that that Ruto is doing this specifically to try and bolster his numbers in 2027? 100%. I mean, there's no other explanation on why he's doing this and when he's doing this. I don't know that this is a trump card that he was holding close to his chest and wanted to use it at some point. But yeah, so there's two issues here. There's an issue of community for so many years, for over 60 years since independence, being unfairly vetted to get a document that they legitimately deserve. And then there's the other issue of a president trying to do this so that he can bolster his numbers because he's lost significant support in the rest of Kenya. And at this point, I open up the floor. I'm going to start with you, Mika, because Mika had something that he wanted to say. Twende kazi, Mika.
No, thank you for that breakdown. Now, one thing I wanted to say was that I come from a border district, what we was used to call the border district. And we have the unfortunate privilege of when we apply for ID, hatuwezi apply ID Nairobi, lazima urudi ushago na ufanye hiyo vetting.
Who does the vetting?
Vetting inafanywa kwa chief. Kwanza unachukua kale kafomu ulikuwa na fill.
Yes.
Unaenda kwa mzee wa kijiji, ana sign, mzee wa kijiji, unaenda kwa sub chief, ana sign, unatoka kwa sub chief, alafu unaenda kwa chief. Alafu hiyo siku kwa DO hapo kuna siku za vetting. Unakaa hivi, unaulizwa maswali, unaishi wapi, umetoka boma gani, kuna mzee wa kijiji hapo wenu, watu wanaulizwa maswali about the area, kama unajua area nini. That's what they used to do for the vetting. So most of us who come from border districts, tulikuwa tuwezi chukulia ID Nairobi, lazima uende ushago ufanye hizo vetting, which has been there now, and that's the reason why you see so many Kenyans are perplexed about it, because ukiangalia watu wengi wenye wanakonsideriwa kuwa kwa border districts, it's a lot, because it goes from Nyanza, kuna areas that border Tanzania, Western, Rift Valley, kuna areas that border Uganda, Sudan. Watu wa coast wanaconsideriwa, I think pia wanaconsideriwa kwa sababu Malindi wana border Somali, right, na Lamu.
Malindi haija border Somali. Maybe sasa ukifika uko side za Lamu sasa.
Yeah, but ukipanda na hiyo njia nini, like ukienda Boni Forest, border is goes straight to Somali. So that hiyo yote ni border district. Those are wote pia walikuwa wanafanyiwa vetting. So the idea of vetting has been there. So when you come and say that just one particular region, right, are the ones who unaenda kutoa hiyo vetting, alisema hii voting tutatoa eneo yetu, and then you open a registration
a new center.
Let's say something like an immigration office there, where the only other place that you have this thing is Nairobi, Mombasa, na Kisumu. Again, it turns around and looks suspicious.
Of course.
Because if you look at the infrastructure of that region to support kusema kuna that huge number of people, it doesn't justify you opening an immigration service center over there. So if you are gonna get rid of vetting, get rid of vetting for the whole country. All the border districts zote toa vetting, wasitoe vetting area moja, toa vetting kila mahali. If you're going to put people registration services and immigration services, put them everywhere in the country. Make it all fair game. And then another thing that actually makes it worse for him is the fact that all the security apparatus zote zinashikiliwa na Somali. So he's been seen like he's wooing the Somali community and trying to get together with them, like to bring them in. This is somebody who went, and the way he likes to put himself out there to show his strength and bravado and how big he is. This is a guy who addressed and made those promises while inside an armored vehicle. He himself was scared of stepping out of the car when he was in Northeastern. You saw how hurried that speech was. He put it out from a vehicle, made promises, promised a road network that will be, I think, the biggest road project in the country, if he does that, and left. I will have a problem with that. So for me, if Ruto was genuinely wanting to abolish vetting, he should abolish vetting the whole country, not just one area.
Okay, so very, very good points. You brought in Nika, and we're gonna go back to the studio. Tumsikie Uno Mike na Omosh. Now, I think what I want people to understand, there is a vetting of umetoka kijiji gani, ile local chief. I believe, like most people, like across the country go through that. So the part that people don't get, is and this is the extra vetting that's done to Somalis and people who are from Muslim communities, where I don't know whether it would be normal to see, because there was a point when it was very normal for a 24, 25-year-old to be still running after an ID. Now, the reason why, like that was specifically happening in those communities is because the vetting that was being done in there was won by
Omosh. Looks like
Ali amepotea.
yeah.
I think.
But I think I understand what he wanted to say. He wanted to say that ile ulikuwa
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah,
Continue.
Okay, all right, sawa. I think you hapo ni bundles za JW Marriott. But do I say? But what was I saying again? So there was there was that
old
issue
man was
of,
chasing the ID.
Yes, because
Where's
what
your
was
video?
happening is that unaambiwa wewe vetting yako, because think about this. I don't know how many of you were asked for your grandfather's ID. There are people who are being asked for their great grandfather's ID.
Wapi video yako?
Me personally,
Okay, so
when I went to get my ID in Kibra, for some reason, they decided that I was from the Comoros Islands. For some strange reason, they decided I was from the Comoros Islands, na ndo hivyo. So I had to go through an extra process. And now the problem is most of the people who don't have someone who can assist them wana kabila ID. And it's not only IDs, it's extended to passports too. Getting passports had been a very, very big issue for people who are in those Muslim communities. So the vetting that was happening for people in Northeastern Province and for people who are coming from Muslim communities was a very different kind of vetting. And eventually, initially ilikuwa niyo NIS, but eventually it became an extortion scheme.
Ali,
it became an extortion.
Ali, we can't see you. We can't see you, boss.
No, my video is
not
on. So I don't know.
Finya nini ya video. Finya.
So kuna
click on it. Click on your video icon.
No, the video is on, but I think the screen that you guys are showing ni ile screen iko kwa studio. Because kuna screen mbili. Mine is showing.
Ali.
Yeah.
Press your finya camera icon yako na nini.
Okay, now I've disconnected it.
Connect it again.
Okay, now I've reconnected it. So, I don't know.
No, there's no video over here.
But Ali,
carry on.
When we go back to the vetting conversation,
now he shows up.
Frozen. I think it's in that Disney.
Mika, continue, Mika.
No, my side is not frozen. My side is
75% ya nani ya bando lake, so
yeah.
That's why.
JW Marriott, my friends.
Mika, carry on. Let him.
No, I was saying when you go back to the vetting conversation, as in, and what I was saying, like with the vetting, I know you were told to. There was that you were told to come with your parents' ID. Kuna watu wengine who didn't have that, then you will have to be asked to go to bring other people. Like I understand when ukisema hiyo ya when you're saying the Muslim vetting was being taken extra because a lot of people out of corruption was a way to get money, and especially with the influx of refugees in Nairobi, Ethiopian or Somali, it was easier for them to use that to kusumbua watu na kugepto. And I get that, but then there was, I've seen somebody apply for an ID in Nairobi, and I've seen somebody apply for an ID in Butula, in Busia. And I can tell you, Ali, hata kwetu ushago kuna watu wana maidi kwa sababu ni stress. By the mere fact that ulikuwa unaambiwa how can you prove wewe si mtu wa Uganda? Because remember that whole region, Wajaluo, Waluya, Waganda, wameoana, wanashare majina.
Yeah.
We've all intermarried, we're together, tuko hivi. Like it's just there. The border is open. Mimi nikiamua sahii naweza piga raundi nitoke Mnduki mpaka Eugene nirudi. Nipige mbio niingie Siaya nirudi. Like it's so you go everywhere. So there was always that hizo maswali utaulizwa, and it was not that it was an easy vetting that was just supposed to be easier, that you're going to be done. So I don't know if it's because of corruption or I don't know if it's because of national security that was strict, but for me, all I'm saying is that let's have uniformity throughout the whole country, if we're being honest. I don't want Muslims to go through an extra security aspect when they're getting the IDs. But I don't want somebody to use that as an excuse to try to farm for votes.
Almost.
Yeah. No habla those issues. Yani, you know what Mika is saying is very true. There shouldn't be what should I call it, ubaguzi in terms of this vetting process. It's either this is a vetting process that's across the board, or it should not happen at all. And if you are getting rid of it, and you're saying that this community is marginalized, or it's this and that, blah blah blah, then you should take that away all the way down. And you know, all that vetting that you guys are doing in the border communities, like Mika has said, you should get rid of that. And even I mean, and like Ali's experience, as he has rightfully told us, he showed up in Nairobi to get his ID, and he was told, boss, wewe, you prove to us that you're not from Comoros. So now you have to go back and start bringing things. Maybe if you have your local, normally they will tell you, Siji, get a pastor, Siji, somebody who can vouch for you internally within the family. Then unarudi na idea watu wa, you know, like, you know, zamani zakale, meaning that your lineage starts from, you know, not just here. It started from a way back. So you're not somebody who slipped in under the cracks. So it's, and this issue, they need to come up with a permanent fix that makes sense, and at the same time is still, for lack of a better word, securing the borders, or at least keeping people out such that they're not easily getting IDs and or able to circumvent, you know, the little so-called checks and balances that we have. You know, whatever that is, that's what should be used. Now, obviously, we have our regular corruption related things, which unfortunately for us, that's, you know, that's always going to be there until somebody eradicates it completely. And it is possible to eradicate it, but as long as it's still there, there'll be those who are going to slip in through the cracks. But as if we are keeping out 98, you know, you're keeping out 98%, I can live with that 2% who are slipping in through the cracks. But we do need to have something that makes sense, that is being used across the board for everybody. It shouldn't be that because you're from this community or from that community, then you're treated like this or you're treated like that. You know, just like this whole thing with the road networks, Huko in Western, in Northeast. Those jamas, now is when, you know, they literally are having roads that you can actually traverse. We can now actually go there as tourists and be able to move through that region and not have to spend a week on the road while you're worrying about AK-47s, you know.
And being hijacked and being done madhogo than you.
We should not have a security issue in that area. We shouldn't.
You know, the again, sometimes growing up, all we knew was that Northeastern kuna nini? Kuna shida. Kuna attacks, watu wanaingia. That's all that is known. Many people, that is the picture that has been formulated in many of our minds.
Yeah.
Right? So there's also a lack of education. But
Correct, yeah.
there's a lack of education. But then also, I can meet Ali, but one, the leaders, what have the leaders done to either soften the image, change the image, or to reverse the image, to do a whole 180 on the image? Because sometimes, you go to visit a place because either somebody has gone there. Sometimes the media is a culprit, right? And right now, even with social media or whatever, there are certain places that people like now. When you remember when we had that Pokot governor, West Pokot governor,
Yeah.
right? The West Pokot governor who made people want to go to West Pokot. The Mulmuluas guy. The Mulmuluas guy. Whose deputies is a doctor and was working out of town, working out of the country for whatever, got a salary and whatnot. But what ended up happening was you were like, hey, West Pokot, and Anasha maize has been planted, you're like these roads that, it made you want to be like, what, let's take a road trip. But what has been shown, and this is part of the reason of educating, because me, I'm willing to see. I am willing. Maybe there are guys who, say, you know what, come visit my town in Northeastern, Kujo Tembe. There's the issue of harvesting, like, Mika was mentioning. There's also that fear because...
Correct.
Because, again, politics is a brutally contact sport. We know that Kasongo, and by the way, the interesting thing is, somebody identified, is it Angie and Ali agree on one thing? They don't like Kasongo. Anyway, Kasongo right now has fallen out of favor in Murima. I don't know about Western.
He's not a trustworthy guy.
Yes.
So that, the falling out of favor is also based upon the things that you do. I look at you in your face and I'll tell you one thing, but the minute I leave this space, I'm doing another. Or I could be looking at you in your face and telling you one thing, yet my chaps have been instructed to shoot you in the head.
Mm-hmm.
So it's...
Kasongo needs to find a new base, because even that handshake in Yamepiga, it's not that strong. In fact, there are rumors, very credible rumors, that our Skizani hata kidogo.
Oh, Skizani?
Hata kidogo, yes.
Na
Rao.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
When that big Kisumu project was being opened a few weeks ago, did you see Kasongo there? That new in Kisumu, the marina that is being built in Kisumu, when it was being committed, Kasongo wasn't there. He anaenda campaign too, na kendo campaign unangarao na.
No, I think there was only one time, right?
When he was going to China, yeah, but after that, you don't see Rao.
Yeah,
I think there was one time.
Which other one?
So he has to look for numbers somewhere. And if you've noticed, in the country right now, local leaders wameanza kupolitics, wameanza kufanya kazi. Because people have realized that chances of them being one-term parliamentarians are very high.
There was a video that was circulating today that showed, I think, alikuwa huko Northeast. No.
Alikuwa nini?
Isiolo.
Isiolo, wakamtukana.
Yeah. So it's again,
Punde mechoka.
It's one of those situations where like the song, whatever anyone touches it turns to gold. Midas touch.
Yes.
Humsi akona Midas touch ya uongo, akona Midas touch ya kudanganya. Like,
Yeah. So
this guy. Oh, finally he's here.
Yeah. So let me go back to that ID issue, because I think there's a point that's not coming through.
Okay.
Remember back in the days when like I think 2013, 2014 kuza Matchbox. Unaona these abductions that we are, and this is just a different example, these abductions that we are seeing now, like that we saw last year and up to this year,
yes,
that became mainstream. Do you know who used to be abducted before? And it was never a big issue.
Yeah.
Muslims.
Yeah.
And I talk about these things. The reason why I talk about these things is because most Muslims will choose not to talk about this, not to ruffle feathers. So by the way, the abductions, we were so used to them in our community. These things he brutally invent, by the way. It's just that now when it came to now other communities, that's when it became a big deal. But to abduction, it had been happening. Hundreds of people were abducted, they disappeared, and never known where they went to. And so I'm going back to the ID issue.
Yeah, that came
the
also
way
with assassinations.
We used to be vetted up. Actually, Wairimo mentioned a very important thing. Wairimo says, even Muslim converts that are Wabara are put through the ringer to get ID. There are boys in their 40s today still without IDs. So there was a specific profiling that was targeted.
Wanubi,
let us not try to minimize that.
She said she meant Wanubi.
Ali, ngoja kitu moja.
Let us try not to minimize that.
Ali, I get what you're saying. But sikia point yangu.
Point yako.
Ngoja. Kuna point na make hapa. Point na make ni hii vetting hajasema ni Waislamu wote. Ameka area moja. You get what I'm saying? Ameka area moja.
Mimi nasema ni
hii vetting haifungue kila mahali. Cause hakuna haja hapo pale alikuwa wherever he was huko Ajia, there is no vetting, but there is vetting in chini ukishuka Isiolo. There is vetting chini ukienda nini Hola. Ukifika ufike Lamu bado kuna vetting. Ukienda Mombasa kuna vetting. Ukienda Nairobi Kibira kuna vetting. It's just so don't discriminate.
I agree. Does Ruto have sinister motives in what he's doing? Absolutely yes. And I think that's what has clouded this thing.
Yes.
And I think it was a wrong way of doing it.
That right there is the issue.
Yeah. It was a wrong way of doing it. Mm-hmm. He did it with a sinister motive.
Yes.
And I think that's what's clouding this whole thing. But then looking at the perspective from the one thing with the Somali leaders, wow, they brought it up. Unfortunately, leaders were coasts and other communities that were affected have not advocated for themselves like the Somalis have. So part of this I also blame on the leadership from Lamu and all those other Muslim majority counties. I blame those leaders because wa Somali wao walikuja na wakamwambia Ruto, hii hapa ni issue yetu. Huku kwingine, these other leaders were busy kissing us, but they are bringing these issues that have been affecting their people. So I think, like looking at it from that perspective, the Somali leaders were looking at like, this is something we are never gonna get. We know Ruto needs something from us. And before we guarantee whatever we are gonna give him, we are gonna ask him, na wewe tupatie hii kitu ingine. So I think that is part of the problem with the way this whole thing was done. Na hiyo hapo kwenda to the extent of unaweka immigration office huko, when to me it would have been okay if what they could devolve immigration offices, we put them in all other major population centers, at least one center in the 8 old provinces. But then when you specifically choose a particular location, that raises suspicion. And then of course the nullification of census, I've never had something of that sort. Now, with the nullification of census, let's also be clear, these communities have also been undercounted. That has never been a secret. They have been undercounted, but a nullification of census, to me, I've never heard of it. I didn't even know that a census could be nullified, like an election,
and only for
and
a
then you demand a
specific
recount.
area, and only for a specific area. Then you do a recount just in that area.
You do a recount.
You should be doing the entire thing.
That's right there. I would love to understand the legality of it. That also brings credibility issues to the judiciary.
Who's funding it?
Of course, it's taxpayers. Who else is funding it?
Of course, taxpayers.
Now you say it's no longer there.
No, yeah,
Ushuru.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Almost use taxpayers' money to win you the next election. That's why you're there.
Oh, sorry, Basi.
Taxpayers. Ushuru ile tunalipwa. Even that child, ile black tax. Hiyo black tax tunatuma inaenda kufund hiyo.
So, but I normally send to my people. Are you saying my people are Kasongo?
Your people use that money in Kenya.
Yes, they use that money.
So, but
Kasongo anatumia
so
pesa
at some point it's taxed.
Because you think about it.
Yeah, so
kuna sales tax, kuna VAT.
Yeah.
But
so kuna comments hapa zilikuwa zinakuja. Pan-African anasema the reason Ruto causes anxiety is lack of trust. He's very dishonest, doing harmful things is not out of bounds for him. And then Apa Washekena is accusing me of staying in Motel 6. Some will leave the light
on leave the light on for you.
Okay, the light is on, but that's just about it.
Yeah, and then Apa Wairimo pia anasema also Wanubi, not Wamboi. I think he meant Wanubi. That autocorrect. And then Wamboi Jacob anasema, I thought they used birth certificates to issue ID. So Wamboi, you're not wrong on that, and this is what most people don't understand. Kama ni Muislamu, hiyo birth certificate haitoshi.
It means
and you
nothing.
see like
yes.
You see birth certificate ya babu.
Inategemea kwenu ni wapi.
You see birth certificate ya babu, it doesn't matter kama uko na, but sometimes to prove utaambiwa leta birth certificate ya wazazi, but then when you're born in 1980, where are you getting birth certificate ya babu? Because those are the things, and some people are being even asked for one for the great grandfather, and you wonder where they were supposed to get
those
these
guys
documents. So a lot of people were not aware that this was happening in Kenya.
No,
they didn't have birth certificates.
Yeah, I mean, if Omosh, if you are born in 1980, or if you were born in 1948 like you, where are you getting your grandfather's birth certificate? Where are you getting it? Where are you getting your because someone who's born? Yeah, I know.
And this,
I know.
And this
by
is,
the way,
and this is also history.
By the way, my late grandmother was actually a midwife. Wala walikuwa wanazalisha nyumbani. So people used to give birth at home, and this is even so recently. You know,
like even most of our parents, most of our parents were born not even know.
Generation yetu ndo tumezaliwa kwa hospitali.
Yes, generation yetu ndo tumezaliwa hospitali because my grandmother alikuwa anazalisha watu mpaka 1970s. There are people who were born in 1970s, aliwazalisha, you know, and that's why I'm saying, you know, like some of these processes, initially maybe there was a reason, but they became abused and they became an angle for extortion. And through that extortion, now people who are not Kenyans took advantage of the situation where they realized, oh, by the way, huku mtu akilipa anaweza pata any document. So you have, you know, like you have a lot of, you know, like Somali citizens who are given Kenyan documents. You have a lot of Indians who were given Kenyan documents waindi wakuja, not those ones who are originally Kenyan. You have people from all kinds of places in Kenya who have Kenyan documents because that system now was completely abused because it started by trying to wring money out of the people who are being vetted. Then now people outside saw, oh, kumbe hawa watu ni hongo tu wanataka. Then they started doing that and giving IDs to other people. The other controversial part that also the president said, it's not controversial to me, but it's controversial because it's coming from the president and his ulterior motives, is that fast tracking, like idea ya refugees kupatiwa residency and citizenship in Kenya. To me, in my own view, because I'm looking at this now differently, outside of Ruto, someone who was born in Kakuma or Dadaab in 1992, hajawahi kuwa Somalia, and now you're in your 30s, you're 32 years old, you have a Kenyan education, unaongea Kiswahili. I have no problem with such people being given a path to citizenship. I honestly don't. The only problem is that with the president's ulterior motives, this thing will be totally abused.
And that's the issue.
It will be totally abused. Yeah, and I think that's part of the issue that people are bringing up.
That is the issue. So Ali, that is the issue.
So mnasema kuna wase wataletwa in truckloads na wapewe nini? Wavote.
Again, that's the issue.
Watavukishwa.
That is the issue. And okay, maybe like here how Kerea, the twice convicted Kerea is setting up citizenship Kerea department. Maybe we should a vetting department. Anyway, I think there's a mischaracterization, there's a lot of misjudgment, there's lack of education because people just don't know. And that brief history that Ali gave us is a good insight because sometimes it's good to really understand. Like now, whatever has been going on in Gaza, we never understood it because we always thought that these guys are the bad guys, the aggressors. Not until you find out, you learn that the history,
yeah,
and that is what is lacking because now with that you can empathize, you can know. You can be like, okay, now I get it. Okay, no, fine, but let this process be legit. How can we verify or how can we whatever? Okay, to make it, because remember, we were born into borders.
True. Yes.
We were not there when these were being cut up. I think almost maybe like 2 years after the Berlin conference.
Sure.
But sorry.
But our parents were actually not born into borders. Our parents were not born. We were born into borders. Our parents, the borders they were born in were different from the borders that we were born in. So remember, if you were born in the coastal strip before the 60s, before 1963, you actually not you're not a Kenyan. You are not a Kenyan.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. So this thing is very fluid, and of course it goes back to the Berlin conference. Yeah. And even when we look at the conflict in the DRC, which will soon bring experts to break it down.
Yes,
you will see that what people are learning now is that Rwanda, Burundi, and a certain part of Eastern Congo, it was one big community, but one portion was taken by the Belgians, another one by, I don't know, the French. These borders were split up. So those people who are on the Congo side, who are being accused of being Rwandese, it's kind of like crossing the border into Tanzania and then accusing the Tanzanian Maasais of being Kenyan.
Yes.
Wale Wajaluo unaita wale Wajaluo wa Tanzania, Wajaluo wa Kenya.
Same thing.
Yes.
And you see again,
absolutely,
history, just history. Hatufunzwi. So we've got these stories, and then on top of that, like Omosh was saying, we are not really telling our own stories. All we are doing is we are copy pasting. Hatufanyi upelelezi, hatuendi kuketi chini. We are not interrogating. We are not both. All these media houses don't have, like Bandia was telling us, it is expensive, but just for the sake of journalism, you can go, unafanya upelelezi, you sit down, you investigate, you come up with a story. You come up with factual stuff, and then you just let people know so that people can know. Because sometimes we are fighting, and like now, for example, we are casting aspersions on the Somalis or the our brothers and sisters Kule Northeastern without even understanding history.
Correct.
And that leads us to down a very bad and dangerous road, because you start being biased.
The bias is bad.
Oh, the bias is bad.
The bias is
and that is the problem.
Really bad.
Because the notion is watu wanakuja si wa hapa wamekuja kuzaa they have taken over Isli whatever. Ngoja sasa you guys will be ruled. Angalia Wasomali wanaenda wananunua mabase, wanaenda wananunua broti makuta. Wakikuyu, you guys are in trouble. That is the narrative.
Correct.
And chances are these are probably people who are born within the Kenyan borders who are Kenyan. But the fact that
you see the reason why sometimes governments do not want to educate people is because these politicians know once people have this information and they're educated, it's difficult to manipulate them. So right now, it is so easy to go tell the average Kenyan, like our Somali, they're the reason why, things are not. It is so easy to do that. It is so easy to manufacture that hate when this knowledge is not there at all. It is so easy. You always have to ask yourself a question. Whenever a politician comes and tells you, Wale, those other people from that other community are the reason why you're not doing well, your radars have to go up immediately, because they prey on the fact that people don't know these stories, they don't know this history. So it's easy to manufacture a story and create hate and to manipulate political opinions in an area where now people will start saying, oh, unaona hawa watu wamekuja kuchukua kila kitu. Hawa watu wamekuja kufanya hivi. So that's the reason why they like people staying uninformed. Because once people start learning all these things, it's difficult to come and tell someone, nendo kamchukia Ali, na Ali hajakufanyia kitu. It's very, very difficult to do that. But when people don't have this information, it is very easy to whip emotions. Look at how people are manipulated. One day, mnaambiwa ati Wajaluo ndo enemies. And then the next day, Wajaluo sawa wamekuwa marafiki. Now it's the Kikuyus who are enemies. This thing needs to stop. And there was a lot of comments that were coming in here as we were talking. Hapa Washeke anasema it feels like NFD has been punished by successive governments since independence for wanting to be part of Somalia, which is very true. And then hapa Omosha anasema Wamboi, that along with things like school living certificate, barua from pastor, as well as ID to Kwenyu. And then I can see Pablo hapa anasema the problem with Kenyan politics is that it is about tribes and personalities and not issues. That's very true.
Yep.
Everyone is talking about alignments to make Ruto a one-term president. Issues are lacking. And that's very dangerous.
100%.
Yeah, that's very dangerous. And alafu anasema the NFD issue didn't start with Ruto. Very true.
No, it did not.
Successive governments have played politics, the people of NFD too. And then Pan-African anasema 2027 and beyond is looking a bit scary because of political narratives. And then Wairimo anasema that is so true, Ali. There's actually a group in Kwale that just got citizenship as a group in the last 10 years. And these are the Makonde people.
Yeah, the ones from, are they from the original Zaire, or where were they from?
No, they're not from Zaire. They are from
Congo.
From a country called Msumbiji. Unajua Msumbiji?
Msumbiji is
Mozambique.
Oh yeah, I remember those guys.
So,
but they've been here since
they came from Mozambique. They came
60s, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
60s, I think 60s or maybe even before. So they
Yeah.
came to work for, I think it was this sugar company called Ramisi. Walikuja wengi, wakasettle successive generations. But now, here's the other interesting thing. Ujue hapa vile politics huwa inachezwa. It was also a political thing. These people, the stayed successive generations, they should have been given citizenship, but Uhuru was also doing that to also bolster his numbers. And that's another thing. Now tuko na Ruto, and Ruto he's gotten us to the bottom of the pit. So we forget also about how Uhuru was also not a very good president.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, but he was not a very good president.
No, he wasn't.
Overall.
Are you saying he was a bad president, or he was a good politician?
Now, compared to Ruto, no, when we were with Uhuru, we thought we've reached the bottom of the pit.
I'm just saying.
With
this guy is a bad president. And a bad politician.
The thing with Ruto, he's a bit more reckless. He's a bit more reckless. Uhuru was more calculated.
Excuse me.
But
I think Uhuru was a better politician.
That's why I said correct. That's why I said he was a good politician.
Let me tell you, and I get that part of recognizing, citizenship, papers, authority, whatever it is, because look over here, Ronald Reagan 86 alipatia watu mapepa.
It was amnesty.
Amnesty.
Yeah.
You're like, because so with Obama, if DACA had passed, if that one had passed, Missouri bila madhogodhanio, we'd be talking something different. So yes, in one aspect, when I look at that, yes, it's a political move because it's about getting votes. It's pretty much saying, you know what, we looked out for you guys. What's up? Like when part of the reason the orange man went and looked and took Pence, the evangelical vote. There's not that reason. I'm now trying to study why this other guy, the couch guy, was elected. I'm sure there's a reason, but we'll be told.
I think in Kenya, the people of good conscience, all these people who are tuned in, and all the people who are complaining, and it's a lot of people who don't like the current state of politics. I think we all need to learn politics. We all need to learn politics because I think the problem that happens is that we let those bad guys run roughshod. Akina Oscar Sudi, Akina Kipchumba Murkomen.
Did you see Oscar in class today?
Yes. So we know certain good people who are already within the political space, like Okiya Omtata, it's known that he's fighting for the people.
Yes.
So why can't we figure out a way in which we can support him? He's already declared, like he's exploring the idea for running as president. Why don't we try to figure out what it is that these bad people do that makes them very popular on the ground? Is it messaging? Is it
it's always messaging.
I mean, of course there's illegal stuff they do.
It's money,
like
man.
Bribery of voters, and
money.
that you cannot win.
There's a lot of exchange of money. And that
I think part
of
that messaging is money.
That opens a lot of doors, even the doors that are closed. Part of the thing in the I know, like for some of us guys from the our shags areas, IDs are purchased, so you don't vote, and it's not purchased that one of the willingly. It's that one of pretty much somebody literally removes bunduki and tells you, "Leta your kitu. Your voter's card is being purchased. You can't vote. It's bought."
But almost look at it this way.
Yes, go ahead.
Someone like Okiya Omtata has given us a template. He won the Senate race for Busia County against a very strong ODM. I think also UDA had a heavily financed candidate, but he was still able to win without dishing out money. So there's a lesson in that. There's a way of doing this.
Ali, you're right.
Without dishing out money.
At the presidential level, you're gonna have to drop money. Whether it's not gonna be that one of we the people. unless something changes about our people who are actually voting. Meaning, can we get those folks who have been out on the streets and all of that to go get IDs and get voters card and come out as we the people?
But in addition to that, messaging.
Messaging,
correct. And by the way,
you're right,
with social media
you're
right now,
in
today it is huge, and that is where I don't mean to digress, and that's where Dems are failing. And I'm gonna get the Dodge guys are excited, the Trumpers are excited, but Dems are failing in messaging. Is that simple?
Not to move out of Kenya.
Yes.
Not to move out of Kenya.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Dems, they've been defeating the Republicans, the Republicans, but in Kenya, there seems to be this cluster that has monopolized politics, and majority of Kenya does not want them, but we still seem not to be in a position to remove them. We've seen other African countries doing it, whereby an undercard candidate ended up winning. We've seen it happen, and that's the reason why I say there's a way of doing it, especially with small contributions, because there's someone who was saying that it may cost, I don't know whether it's 1 billion or 10 billion to run a presidential campaign. So think about it. If you have, I don't know what hapo kwa comments wafanye math. If we can mobilize, let's say 10,000 people to give 1 million shillings, and then we mobilize, fanyeni math, 10,000, 1 million shillings, 100,000 people to give, no wait, let me start again. The million, 10,000 wengi, let's start again. So we mobilize 1,000 people to give 1 million each. And then we mobilize 10,000 people to give 100,000 each. Then we mobilize 100,000 people to give 1,000 each. Then we mobilize 1 million people to give 100 bob. Hebu calculate hiyo kitu. Si 10 billion imefika? Imefika au haijafika?
Shafika.
Hebu calculate hiyo kitu. Ama you guys are you the guys used to play during math class?
It's too, for me.
Ama nianze tena?
I got 2.1.
E yangu ilienda.
E9. E9. Niko huko ma E9.
Ilienda E9.
Imeenda E9.
Kwani mnatumia Casio calculator? Hamna nini?
No.
Hamna app graphic calculator.
E9 means you shafika B.
Ushafika B. You got there.
Yeah.
The first calculation.
So yes. So
yeah, 2.1
so
billion.
that can happen. Yeah, 1,000 people kutoa 1 million. That's not a very difficult thing. Ni how much? How much is it? Sasa
100 million. And I think I did not fully do the.
So 2.1 billion.
Yes, roughly, and I'm sure people will correct.
So Nona. 2.1 billion. 2.1 billion, and that's a campaign that's totally owned by Kenyans. And you see those numbers, easy pesa ni kidogo. In fact, hata watu wa 1 million, I'm a bit skeptical, because 1 million is a big amount they can ask for something. I think from 100,000 and below. Unajua kama umetoa 100k si pesa kubwa, huwezi kusema unataka job. So when you have a lot of people, you have 10,000 people, you've mobilized kutoa 100k, and then you mobilized 1 million people kutoa 100. That is very doable. That is very doable, and that's where I think people should start thinking come 2027, because Kenya, we're in a very bad place, especially because of debt, and if we're not careful, and we're not like America, where because our currency is pegged to the US dollar. We're not like America, who can just print money and create money out of thin air. Will be in a very troubled place. Hapa Pan-African amesema, even with 2.1 billion, there needs to be a lot of voluntary work. Presidential campaigns in Kenya are extremely expensive. That is very true. And that volunteer army, you start building it now. So that we don't lose this other topic. Omosha, I want to come back to you. Last night, DJ Top Don had a very interesting conversation on why the Bien tour was postponed in the US. For those who are not familiar, Bien of Sauti Sol was to come on tour in the US. And there was a Nigerian by the name of Do Concept who was promoting the tour. And on the last hour, it was canceled. And I believe it was because of visa issues. So DJ Moshfire, just give us a brief of what was said in that conversation and where things currently stand.
Kusoma kweli, I didn't join the conversation, so I don't know what was discussed there, but the rumor had it that there was visa related issues in terms of BN's team not being able to come. And ultimately, you know, I think it's about 6 dates initially were cancelled. But as of today, I think probably around 1 p.m. or so, the tour is back on. It's been moved to May, basically. So
the first show is May 12th, May 14th, Wednesday. Howard Community Theatre.
When is rugby?
Isn't that
rugby? No, they cannot. Touching rugby ni kama kuguza murima.
No.
No.
Ndio nauliza, when is rugby? See, it's in May.
No. Rugby is that weekend, I think, of 4th. Is it 3rd and 4th?
I think it's the first weekend 4th. In May. Right?
Yeah, it's the first week. Kuguza rugby ni kama kuguza murima.
Ndio maana nasema watu wa rugby mujipange accordingly for May. So
okay.
May may be a busy month, but BN is going to be here in May, and that's
okay. And we'll actually work on trying to get BN in studio. So is there a date for DMV, Omosh?
Yeah,
May 14th.
There are dates.
May 14th.
May 14th. What day of the week is
Wednesday?
Is that
Wednesday?
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
So actually, the tour starts in DC. So May 14th is
the tour starts in DC.
May 14th is DC. May 17th Boston. 18th New York City. 21st Atlanta. 23rd Cincinnati, Ohio. 24th Minneapolis, Minnesota. 25th Dallas, Texas, and 26th Seattle, Washington. So
okay, all right. So Uno Mike, did you have a chance to listen to the conversation? Yesterday?
I jumped on late, but then I rewound it all the way back. All the way back.
What did you get out of it?
The issue was, and I think right now the main concern, I think most and I think Kelly's the one was bringing it up along with Nash, and the issue was why post a show when the visas are not out. We should have already learned this a long time ago.
Learned behavior, is that what you're saying?
Yes, like already you should know. Don't post a show until the visa is out.
But do we know that visa was the issue?
Visa was the issue. Yes, visa was the issue. And it was the visa not of Bien, but of I think a band member, guitarist or something. Yeah, it wasn't for Bien, but it was someone who was supposed to be on the contingent coming with Bien, and Bien wants to curate these very good shows. And so Waka decided we cancel.
So my take from that was, like, first, most of the guys were in consensus that it's important to have the visa done first before you start pushing the show. That is one. However, you don't try and secure the show when you know you have a gig in about a month.
Oh, okay. What do you mean?
Because if you're planning for a gig in a month,
okay, understood.
Got you. You can't. You get the visa like a year behind, a year back, because so that when you already have the visa, even when you plan, you already know that this guy is coming. And that was the issue. That was ideally was the issue.
So I've never gone through with getting these visas because people used to come on
H1Bs,
visitor visas.
Yeah,
but now they're actually coming on a work visa.
Yes,
right.
Yes.
So if you don't have the work, then if I'm the one who's issuing the visa, why would I give it to you?
But the work is pending because I'm.
Therein lies the question.
What?
If I am the person if it's me who's issuing you the visa, I'm not giving you a visa before I see a contract.
Okay, the contract can be done.
Correct.
Because
the contract can be done.
But if the contract is done for date X, and the contract is going to be done for date, basically the contract is not going to be done for a year from today. Do you understand what I'm saying? So sometimes
it's not going to be done a year from today.
Yes.
But
if you're planning for a show,
you want to have, let's say, like if you're planning for a show in February, yes, you have to make sure before you start advertising.
Correct.
Whatever time you start. Let's say you want to start advertising maybe 2 months before the date of the show. You make sure you start applying such that within the time that you want to start advertising, the visa is in hand. And that was Kelly's argument, which I totally agree with him.
And for me, I will tell anybody who is willing to listen, if you've not dealt with the American embassy, I don't know about other embassies, if you have not dealt with the American embassy, all these things sound very nice as long as you're an American. Once you're not an American, everything is thrown out. There is no expedited anything. There is nothing like that. They give you a date that they give you when it is that you're going to get this date, whatever it is. Now, some people have that thing of say, okay, well, maybe I'll apply 3 months before. And if you apply 3 months before the anticipated, performance date, you may actually get that, what is it called? The visa interview in 3 months. There's a backlog. And these guys are in no rush at all to give you a time. So I can get what's being said, but then sometimes also practically for someone to go around, secure venues, blah, blah, blah. So I guess, part of it is like you're doing a whole lot of work for something that you're not sure of because you don't, for one, applying for a visa is not a guarantee you'll get a visa, right? And for two, at the same token, with this backlog, you don't know when exactly your date is going to be for you to be called in to go do these things.
But if you're going to earn money and pay taxes and leave taxes over there,
correct, they don't have to honor you.
They don't. No, I agree. They don't have to
honor you.
Therein lies the problem. But if I know if this guy is going to go there, we are going to get some taxes or whatever. Nataacha pesa huko. Acha ende.
That sounds nice.
So Omosh, the thing is,
come on, it's business.
You can,
sounds nice, but
no, Omosh, you can go secure your venues. You can do all that because at the end of the day, this is a business. Correct. Nipata potea, you might get, you might lose. Correct. So you can go secure your venues.
Yeah.
Securing a venue doesn't mean you have to advertise. You go secure your venue because you're the one who's doing marketing. Yeah. The issue is the advertising. So you can do all the preparation that needs to be done. Like early enough, but do not advertise before you have the visa in hand. If you went to apply for the visa and they told you that your appointment is in 5 months, then do not post a date within those next 5 months because the visa is not going to be issued within those 5 months.
So Ali, would you wait until you have the visa in hand, or would you start advertising? Let's say your interview is, I don't know, in February, right? And your show your show is in March. So at what point would you start advertising for the March show?
So I'm not a promoter, but if I was one, this is how I would do it to win.
Because you see, right now you're talking not as a promoter, but as a consumer.
Yeah, but I'm saying, from the shoes, because now the problem is me as a consumer.
Yes,
we've lost trust with promoters because this has happened
one too many times.
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
By the way, it happens all the time.
So you see, for me, like if I'm a promoter I'd be in a position where I'm trying to win back the trust. So, for example, if I want BN, I would first, like approach BN. BN has agreed. I'm like, let's go through the process of applying for the visa. We apply for the visa. Now, when I get a date of an appointment, that will inform when I'm going to schedule the show. I am not going to schedule a show before we've gone to apply for a visa and even been given an appointment, because you can schedule a show for February and then your appointment is in January and there's no guarantee hiyo January ikifika. So for me, let's say like we go schedule a show, nimepatiwa interview na nikaambiwa it's within 3 months. Let's say your 3 months is March. Then I know I'm starting to work with March. I'll start doing the other things, securing venues and everything, but I will wait until here March. I will give it some time from the date of because you need some time to advertise. And I think that's part of the issue. You can't advertise for 2 weeks. Yeah. No, and I think that's part of the issue.
Correct.
So if I know the interview is in March, let's say March 15th, the interview is secured. Now, let's say you need at least 6 weeks to advertise such a show, or let's say 2 months. Then I would count my 2 months from that date when the interview date is. And this is, of course, me talking from the outside. Like I've never been a promoter, I've never worked on securing this. But when this keeps happening and shows keep being missed, then
or postponed,
people are gonna have mistrust of buying advance tickets.
Yes.
Watasema hata tungoje tununue mlango. Then promoters start accusing Kenyans, Wakenya hawapendi kununua advance ticket, when people have been banned before. Watu wamenunua tickets, bana. Watu wamenunua outfits. Watu wamebook hoteli. People bought flights.
People have scheduled
and that's part of the issue.
Ali, I agree with what you're saying, that some things could have been done a different way. But again, also, let's say if it was just a band member, a guitarist, that was the issue. All things being equal. And we've got everybody else secured, and this chap is not secured. Somebody else would be like, you know what, we'll go through and we'll use another guitarist, or we'll use somebody else.
A guitarist here.
You could use a guitarist here, or you could use a backup guitarist there who may already have a visa, but that's not the person who you wanted. But again, when you've already curated your show and you've already set them up, and you see, we see what these guys go through, with their folks, it becomes a little bit tricky. So anyway, to me, there's a lot of what ifs.
But those are the things I'm sure that would be discussed in terms of like when you're setting up these things. Okay, in case visa,
you need to have backups.
You have a plan A, plan B, plan C. In case this visa, the ban, whatever,
you need to have backups of these people, because someone can get sick.
True, and like Muzi said,
and if they get sick, then you have to have a contingent plan.
There's a time Muzi, we interviewed him, and he said sometimes it's not necessary for you to fly out with your band. You can come over here,
correct,
get a band
and
find a training.
That's easier said. Easier said.
But that was coming from Muzi.
Yes, because Muzi has done that. He's been on the show on the road in the US.
Yes,
and like these are the guys who come in.
Yes.
Come in with their people,
yes,
go with their
but
people.
They're coming into your people, but
hawajazoea kufanya hiyo kazi.
But I understand.
Hiyo ni kitu ambayo even for you to even bring that up, they'll be like, you know what, forget the gig. I'm not gonna come.
But coming is one thing. Being allowed to come is another. So that means you have to entertain the possibility of your visa not being there. So if your visa or whatever is not right, then what?
Correct.
Then you adjust. You come over here. You talk to like, hey, Ali.
So I think
Ali, you're a musician, whatever. Mazi, unajua mse nachezanga band, guitar. Like, oh no, don't worry, because there's some guys high school bands.
Yeah,
there is. I'm sure those are mitigation.
I don't think there was a lot of flexibility with this, and I think part of what Ali is saying is that, well, since you knew you didn't have flexibility, then you should have given yourself time for everything to come in.
That's what Kelly was saying.
So that then you now have that flexibility on the back end once you already have the bad in hand.
And right? that's what I think Kelly was saying.
Right? Yeah.
So here's the other question.
Mm.
Here's the other question that I don't think was addressed, because now the new dates that have been issued,
Yeah.
have the visas of those
Apparently
band
they have.
members
Mika,
been secured?
where is Mika?
I,
Mika can
I-
confirm.
Mika is gone.
Oh, Mika is gone. Oh, okay.
I think that everything is now okay.
Yes.
And
Bien has
they-
his
and
visa.
they would not be coming out saying that the show that had been, I guess, cancelled is now back on. Get your tickets, and those who can't make those dates would be refunded. They are not going to go through all of that, because there's a lot riding on this, including the going back to the venues and renegotiating with these chaps and all of those things. There's a whole lot, because it's not even about the artists. It's even about the person who's the promoter, who has to deal with these venues. And this, you're not dealing with this venue for only one artist. You're dealing with these venues for a lot of artists, because this is the business you do. So there's a lot of things that need to fall into place, and even to have gotten those dates to the point where you're securing those dates. If I'm the promoter and the guy who's got the venues, I'm like, yo, show me that stuff. If you can't show me that stuff, I'm not booking this date.
Yeah.
I mean, but maybe that's being extreme, but
Yeah, but according to Mika, all is set.
So
No, the other issue that came up was also the issue of expectations from Kenyan artists, whereby maybe you're trending in Kenya, because you've noticed, Tomosh, from that cohort of artists that used to come from the 2000, from when Jojo Kilimanjaro started doing this in the early 2000s, back I think 2006, 2007, which I think was kind of the peak when the Longombas came and performed at that Hindu temple in Atlanta. But now one of the Longombas has become, like an Ajita and Abia. He calls himself a prophet. But that's a story for another day. But during that time, that's when artists kept coming consistently. The artists who are hot in Kenya. So, and even the artists who came coming after that were those same artists who are hot at that time. There was a point where things froze. And I don't know exactly what it is that happened, because part of what they were saying is that expectations whereby an artist is hot in Kenya. So like when you talk to an artist, zile requirements anakupatia, they don't make sense, because they're not going to be able to pull a crowd to cater for that money that they're asking for. And all those things at the business class, and all those other extra things wanakuja. So they gave an example of Burna Boy, who was doing shows for 5K, and worked to learn this American circuit for a very, very long time. Even when he'd become popular, where he would take less money than he would get paid in Nigeria, just for an opportunity to get known here and to get into mainstream venues. And that in the long run was able to pay off. And I think that's part of what, there was also the argument of why is a Nigeria running, like Bien's show, yet kuna mapromota wa Kenya na nini. So part of Moses' argument of Jabali Africa was that, this Nigerian guy is the one who's going to get us to the mainstream venues and do the show in a professional way. You are like you're doing a tight tour, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You're moving city to city to city. Na show is go katikati ya wiki. So those were some of the things that that came up, and there was a difference in opinion between Kelly and Muzi.
And that's the difference between an artist and a producer. Or should I say promoter. There's a very big difference between an artist and a promoter. And remember, Muzi is a guy who's been on the circuit in the US.
He knows it.
And has done it for years.
Yes.
Over 10 years.
Yeah.
Being, running around the country, driving himself, booking, have a manager going from show to college to trade shows to whatever, and then you have your other gigs that you're being booked, and has done it in Kenya as well. So where he's talking from and where he's speaking from is a very different space from where Kelly is sitting as a promoter who has been promoting, and where Kelly was also doing his promotions, and when Kelly was doing his promotions, because a lot of Kelly's promotions were geared around Vegas, where basically for, I'll use this, it may be a bad adage, but I'll use it anyway. The sheep were already there. You don't have to do anything.
Right.
All you have to do was show up.
Yeah.
Artist or not, they're coming.
Yeah.
So very, very different. From then now, when you have to curate a show where you're doing it almost like Javan was doing, where you're taking that and you're going on the road. And that's a whole other ball of wax. It's very, very different than, bringing in the artist and selling, and very, very different. And I know what Kelly's talking about with the visas. He's gone through that and he knows. And that thing of visas, by the way, it was so bad for us in the 90s. Kofi, when the guy is coming, any one of these Zairwa bands that were coming, we'd say when they fika and someone has seen them, is when we will buy a ticket, or we'll even bother. Because it got so bad that you would buy tickets, or you would get tickets ahead of time. And back then there was no social media, blah blah blah. You go to an actual person who's doing it, you pay for the ticket, umempa pesa yako, and then after a while unambiwa, boss, that chap didn't make it because of visa related issues.
And that was Kelly's point. Kelly was arguing, let us not do that, because Kenyans are getting frustrated to a point where even if they hear Omosh is coming, you know what's going to happen?
I have to see you touchdown.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I have to not even that. I have to see
touchdown, and then you're entering the airport. That's why they do those things where they're doing
those videos.
Yes.
Then I'll be like,
Baka sometimes they have to take a picture with snow.
No, you have to take it over there where it says LAX. Then I say, okay.
Yes. Yeah, and then you have to chomo a video and say today is February 7th, Friday.
The newspaper.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That way, that is where it's going, yeah.
Kama show ya bien inanza 14th. Do you know what crazy thing could happen, or maybe should happen in my dreams?
What?
If by surprise, because 14th is not too far from Vegas. Kwa nini bien asikuje kuperform Vegas?
You mean?
Not Vegas, I mean LA.
LA.
Yeah.
Rugby.
Kwa nini bien asikuje kuperform Vegas? That will be crazy. Hiyo hapo sasa,
so
it will now bring even those people
ana plant seed huyu.
Unasema wasewa one mic show wachukue hiyo kazi.
I'm just throwing out an idea. I see hatuwezani na hiyo kazi. Let's just be honest.
Kwani si tuko na platform
no. Let me tell you, Omosh, hiyo kazi ya promotion,
yes,
it is not for the faint of heart.
It is not. It really is not.
Unataka kuwa nani wewe?
Hiyo kitu
wachia nani? Kina Kelly, kina Jojo, hao watu. Wacha angangana na hizo mambo. Akina Sistuki.
Hiyo kazi. But mimi nasema if that could happen, man, that will be so amazing, because Kenya merudi rugby and then BN is headlining. Man, hiyo kitu itatumaliza. But if it's starting in DC, we have homework and we need to start working on it right now.
Correct.
Yes.
To make sure that BN will come
and studio.
Sit in the studio. Acheze ka guitar hapo.
Tubonge naye.
Hapa kwa studio.
Hapa tu.
Hapo because if he's performing in DC on the 14th. If the 14th is a Wednesday.
Okay.
I'm sure he's not arriving in US on the 13th. I'm very sure of that.
So
he's probably arriving a week before.
Kuna vile hiyo Friday anaweza kuwa
hapa tu kwa studio.
Okay.
Yes.
And I hope this message gets out to him. Where BN?
And it's good if it's starting in DMV. That will be the start of that will now be talking about the whole tour.
Yes.
Of the cities ile ataenda.
Because remember he has performed here.
Correct.
And he loved the experience.
Correct, with Sauti Sol.
With with Sauti Sol.
Yes.
So anajua ile upendo alionyeshwa hapa.
Yes.
Wakiwa na nonini, so yes. So why not?
Yeah. So that right there, Bien.
So planting a seed.
If there's an artist who can pull Kenyans in the middle of the week, it is Bien. Guess what? Even that guy, what's his names? Pratnams. He will not pull out Kenyans on a Wednesday. But Bien will.
Yes. I believe so.
I said it. Even Diamond Platnumz will not be able to pull out Kenyans on a Wednesday. But Bien akingezi hizi mainstream joints.
Sasa hapo tumempa extra pressure.
Well, you know, I think this unpopular opinion, but I think the cancellation of this current tour will just heighten anticipation, and this will be one of the biggest tours we've ever seen of a Kenyan artist.
I think we are ready.
And it will set the standard of how a tour should look like.
I think we are ready. We are ready.
We are ready.
And with that,
we good?
With that,
na wahenga walinena kilicho na mwanzo, ingawa kulikuwa na madhogodhanyo na hitlafu whatever, but it's all good.
Hey, today.
Hakina budi kuwa na mwisho. Meli imetia nanga. We are about to wrap this puppy up. Mikaocha I guess Mikaocha dip. Anena kungana na dodge. Anajaribu kudodge. Almost fire kadhe. Tugende.
It's been an interesting week with lots of ups and downs. I'll just tell people, stay steadfast. Kama we ni mtu kama mimi wa mayai, uanze kulia. Maybe you change your account from DOS to UNO, and they'll stretch further. Ama ukule tu waya na uzinunue at 15 bob a tray. Or should I say 15 bob for 12 eggs. But with that said, we'll see you guys next week. Thank you to our listeners, our old listeners, our new listeners, and our upcoming listeners. Thank you. Stephen Jagani, I see you. Najua muko USAID, Resilient, Wairimu, Pablo, watu walikuwa wengi leo, Andrew Kimani, Sheke, and those who didn't talk, Angie, Bossman. Thank you, Pan-African, for being with us. We do this because of you, and we do this to hang out with you, and see you guys next week. Have a beautiful week, and be careful. Back to you, Ali.
All right, asante sana DJ Moshfire. Asante sana uno mic hapo ndani ya studio, and thank you to everyone who was tuned in. Apologies for the the technical issues we had at the beginning of the show. We are still rusty, but we are getting there. Sasa kuanzia next week ni kutoka teke. Like we have very interesting guests lined up for you, and we are gonna conduct that homework of making sure that Bien gets to Kilimanjaro Studios. So kwa hayo machache, yote ambaye anataka kulipigia simu, nambari yangu bado ni ile 1-800 mteule. Na operator akishika simu, mwambie unataka kusema na mjukuu. Na kikuuliza ni mjukuu yupi, mkumbushe ni mjukuu yule wa Masai, because I'm Kenyan by blood, American by design, Masai by choice. Sichagui, sikagui, na sibagui. Kwaherini.
Aiden, daddy loves you. Jerry, daddy loves you. Nemo, daddy loves you. Until next week, be blessed.
Mini mugenge napitaga na zile ziko maji zimebleki, na kata maji kifika mabis nimebleki, niko fiti nimekula makuki na makeki. Oh yes baby nimesete napenda